One, and we are recording with Matthew Ehret, who came came highly recommended by Dr. Jessica Rose, and seeing as how she's one of my favorite guests, as she is unholy and doesn't give a shit about anything, and that is what I love about her. I figured, well, if Jessica recommends a guest, then they are a good guest for me, and so also this is like the good camera I got summer 2021, I think. And I moved up here to Portland about 2 months ago, and I never set it up again because it was intimidating me because it's scary with a lot of buttons and I don't know how it works. And so I finally like cracked my knuckles the other night and made a big cup of coffee, and I was like, let's fucking do this thing. Let's just suck the dick and let's make this thing work. And I realized it wasn't plugged in, and I plugged it in and it worked. So that goes my whole I'm building it up, but it's at a weird angle instead of in front of me. It's a long story, not important. So this is the first episode with it in a while. And if it looks like I'm not looking at you, it's because the camera's pointing at me. But nobody
Oh,
gives
it's
a
good.
fuck
It's good.
about
It,
that.
it it appeals to the voyeuristic quality of people
Yeah,
like looking in a window,
you can, yeah,
watching us in a
you can
more
watch
candid
me.
fashion
You can
versus the
you,
formal
you
like I'm looking at the camera. So
yeah. You can wear a trench coat and get binoculars and jerk off and look at me from a distance. If that's your thing. If it's not, that's cool too. We accept everybody here.
I would just chime in with my request that people not do that second part, but
Okay,
feel
fair
free to wear a
enough.
trench coat. That's
For if
okay.
you're wearing it, all right, you know what, life's all about life's
That's just
all
me
about
though.
it's all about compromise, man. But yeah, dude, introduce yourself to my audience, and I guess to me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and Glade, I'm very, very happy that Jessica suggested me to you, and I've checked out a couple of your podcasts. They're fun. I like the rapport you have with a lot of your guests, and you got some really great guests. My name is Matthew Ehret. I'm a journalist, a writer with the Strategic Culture Foundation. I am the editor in chief of the Canadian Patriot magazine. It's an online web platform that I put together in 2012. As well as the Rising Tide Foundation, which I co-founded with my wife Cynthia Chung a few years back. And the author, finally, I'll just end it with this: the a 4 volume Clash of the Two Americas book series, which volume 4 is going to be out this week. Clocking in it, it's going to be the Anglo-Venetian roots of the deep state, sort of going into some of the deep backstory of like where this oligarchical structure that a lot of people have woken up to, in especially like the last 2.5 years, has been a big learning curve for a hell of a lot of people. So I wanted to try to give it some contour and shape. Like, what is this thing? Where did it come from? How is it connected to the old British Empire that was the one world empire for centuries? Where did that come from? How is this connected to Rome and Babylon? So that's going to be unpacked in the new book.
Um, yeah, that's one thing I always think about is obviously these things last longer than a single generation. Um, but I'm not necessarily on board with the people that, and they might be right. I have no idea, but personally, I'm not 100% on board with like this is a cabal that's been ruling the world for millennia. Like I think there has been a cabal for millennia. There's always a power structure, whether we're apes or whether you're a bunch of sharks or whether it's humanity. There's always a power structure. There's always top down control. There's always disproportionate wealth. There's always disproportionate access to women and weapons. That's as old as man, right? Be it the pharaohs or be it kings.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I'm subscribed to the idea that there is a single lineage and that it's identified as, I don't know how to word this. It's identified as one. Like the power has probably propagated from one group, but I don't think it's like we are the timeless cabal. I think you probably have different versions of it. Like, I don't think the people in charge today at like the World Economic Forum or the Federal Reserve necessarily find any identity with pharaohs and kings, but nonetheless, they are the modern day pharaohs and kings. That being said, it probably
Hmm.
does exist in like 3 to 500 year blocks of some, like today is like military industrial complex. Maybe I'll be able to say it more clearly. Today's like military industrial complex, Federal Reserve, Petro Nazi, just power cohort. They are probably of the same lineage of like the one that was around 100 years ago, right? Kind of setting up the Federal Reserve, World War One, World War Two. They, I imagine, in their smoky room of cigars, they have like oil paintings of Bush Senior and Smedley Butler, maybe like FDR or something. But like, I don't think it's movie-esque in that we began with King Tut. Like, no, it probably goes in like 4 to 500 year, almost like a football dynasty, whereas that's like 3 to 10 years. I feel like there are blocks of it. Not that you asked any of that, but there's
No,
my
no, no, no. We're chatting.
unsolicited.
We're just it's
I realized
casual.
as
It's
I said it, I'm
casual.
like, there's my unsolicited opinion. Like,
No, no, that's good. No, that's part of the casual conversation mode. Um, yeah, no, I don't think I just a quick little chiming in. They might have a whether these shady things, these shady military industrial executives have common meetings in a certain location upon whose walls we would find a Smedley Butler. I don't know if they really like Smedley Butler. I think they
no, they hate
probably would
that.
not
I
have him on
realized
the
that was
wall.
a flaw when I said that. They don't have paintings of Smedley and JFK. They have targets on those. They have
Yeah, they
dartboards.
probably have like an effigy
Yeah, like a Moloch thing.
hanging on a noose
They get pissed. Yeah, they get pissed
where they
drunk and
throw darts.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
they throw darts at my older brother had a joke that yeah, all the demons that run the world, they have a salsa bowl that's JFK's head and you dip chips into the wound.
Oh, you know what? There's something here, and before we go back into the conversation, the question of continuity of conspiracy, because it's a rich topic to explore. But on the issue of this particular thing we're bringing up now, I live in Montreal, and or I used to live in Montreal. Now I'm a little bit south of Montreal. Um, I wrote in a couple of chapters in the second volume of my Clash of the Two Americas, that really unpacked what JFK was actually doing, what were his policies, what power structures was he challenging, and how was he eliminated by whom, and sort of just mapping out using some of this the research that was published by Jim Garrison, the district attorney of New Orleans. I sort of just mapped out some of those structures, tied it to some of the elements of what today might be called deep state. We had things that were tied to Allen Dulles and his very independent intelligence apparatus that had a big control over the CIA, had
Yeah.
big controls of big parts of the FBI, that were all colluding. But one of the key agencies that I identify and really unpack was a Montreal-based operation that was known as the Permanent Industrial Exposition, Permindex, and it was run at the time by a fellow who had been a former OSS operative under William Louis Stevenson, named Louis Mortimer Bloomfield. And he was a major controller of this thing. Again, its base of operations was in Montreal, and what this thing was is it sort of masqueraded as sort of this entrepreneurial conference building enterprise with outlets in all parts of the world, mostly in the transatlantic. But what they had been actually doing, and this operation was built up during World War II as part of an assassination bureau to kill high level parties on the other side of the in the opposing camp. It was never disbanded. It was given a new sort of like bit of lipstick and put to work during the Cold War, integrated with a lot of, ironically, former Nazis and fascists who had formerly been our enemies, who became absorbed into the Western intelligence apparatus by Allen Dulles and others.
Reinhard
This was known as
was it
Operation Gladio.
yeah, was it Reinhard Galen? Wasn't that one of them?
Reinhard Galen's entire apparatus was
Yeah,
reconstituted
we
and
just
put
brought him
back into
right.
play,
We just
controlling
brought
Eastern
him.
Europe.
Yeah, we just brought him right in, stamped an American flag on it, and we're like, all right,
Totally.
let's bygones be bygones.
Yeah, for those who don't know, this is like the top intelligence officer under Hitler, who
Yeah,
like this guy was like on the inside of the inside. Completely not punished at Nuremberg. They did throw away some lower level
yeah,
disposables at Nuremberg,
yeah,
but the higher level operatives in
yeah.
both Nazi and Italian fascist camps were all absorbed by Western intelligence, including also Japanese
I was gonna
fascists
say
too, I would say.
Unit 731, Japan,
And
General
exactly, that was
Shiro Ishii. Come
get
on
to work
over.
with. Yeah, Fort Detrick, Maryland. We
Yeah,
got a
fuck
nice
it.
office space for you.
Yeah,
Bring
fuck
your
it.
team.
That's Sorry to interrupt real quick, but me and my friends were joking last night about, you know how like Seth MacFarlane was supposed to be on one of the planes, the creator of Family Guy was supposed to be on one of the planes that hit the Twin Towers, but he got so shit faced the night before that he missed his flight.
That's amazing. No, I
Yeah,
didn't know
so
that.
we wouldn't have Family Guy. Um, but we were kind of laughing. We're like, man, like, how does that guy ever like tell his kids don't drink or something? Like, I should be dead, but instead I invented Family Guy and I'm worth more money than God. Like, on that note, I mean, what's the takeaway from Paperclip and Gladio? Hey, if you're gonna be evil, be the most evil of the evil. You'll get a job. Everyone just below you will do show trials and hang them so that the public is satisfied. But if you're the top of the top, we'll bring you over in like a gold-plated jet, and you'll be part of the apparatus. What's the takeaway from that? Sorry, keep going.
It's definitely, I mean, I don't know how some of these upper level managers um of the system talk to their kids. And it's like, do they wish that their kids take on the sort of mantle and obligations that they've sold their souls to? I would think that some of them don't want that. I mean, because they probably know that they had to kill something inside of themselves along the way to become the players that they are. And I'm speculating right now,
Yeah.
right? But I would imagine that there must be something deep down inside, looking at the innocence of a small child that you've brought into this world, that you're like, I would rather not have this kid go through what I particularly went through, as far as, yeah, murdering my innocence and
Yeah.
engaging in something that oversaw the murder of millions of people in Africa, leading beautiful souls like Martin Luther King Jr. and JFK. I'd rather not have them to, but maybe that's maybe probably a minority
Well, that might be
of
our
those
own
oligarchs who have the call to conscience
that
scratching away at them.
that might be our own projection of humanity. The very
Maybe
fact that they
they've
are
killed it
capable
so
of doing that.
effectively. Yeah, they might have killed it so
It
effectively
might
that that's not even a thought.
I'm
Maybe they're
going
just
one
like, yeah, okay,
I'm going
let's
one
groom
step
my kids.
I'm
let's
going one
let's make
step
sure.
further and saying that they didn't have to kill shit. It was never there. They are either true believers or just psychopaths. You and I are having this talk, and they're probably like, what do you mean? I had to kill something. They're like, I
Yeah,
protected the
I don't.
empire.
They might have that opinion, but I don't subscribe to the popular idea of the psychopath as somebody genetically born with no conscience. I don't. I just don't believe that. I think everybody has at birth like some potential
Yeah.
to have conscience. Maybe the amplitude of it is maybe differentiated, but I think it's always there to be made better or worse, based on our decisions.
Well,
That's my view.
kind
So
of
again, whether in my view, in my worldview, whether or not they are, any of them have a memory or recollection, or still a little bit of a
just
pull in their subconscious or maybe in their dreams that come to haunt them. I
yeah.
don't know. I'd like to think maybe they have bad dreams.
I
I'd
I
like to.
feel I feel like it doesn't really seem like nepotism's there. Because I mean, if we're talking about like the deep state, like the power structure, that is like the tip of the spear. That is the highest apex. I don't think that, aside from like a George Bush and then like, HW passing it along to W, I don't really feel like nepotism works there. I think it is just the most ruthless. Like we don't hear the name Dulles anymore, right? We don't hear, the Carnegies and Rockefeller. Like those are all kind of, they go away. I think it's I think it's probably just like an ever refreshing cycle of just the top dogs make it, and it probably doesn't get passed on. You're a child. You probably eventually you reach an age where you go, I think my dad was involved in some hardcore shit, and you probably just, I don't know, you probably got to bury that and go, you know what, just, you probably just blot it out. You just go, whatever, and you just kind of, right. You go, did my grandpa assassinate JFK? You're like, I don't know, man. I got a wife and kids. I'm just doing my thing. You probably just blot it out because I don't know what else you can. And what are you gonna do? Challenge them? Because you're postulating that these are the guys that run the world. It's like that line in the Batman where he's like, so let me get this straight. You're speculating that your boss is a billionaire who fights criminals in the middle of the night and beats them with his bare hands, and your job's to blackmail him. Good luck. Like, if your speculation is true that your dad is one of the most ruthless operators in the world, what are you gonna do? You
No, I mean, I think that this is where it's a probably the way I see it. Oh, and I didn't get to my punchline. So okay,
Oh,
just quickly,
sorry.
just
Fuck.
let me just quickly
No, no, yeah, yeah.
double
Sorry.
back,
No.
and then we're gonna jump back on this. Don't say sorry because this is all tied together, right? Um, as far as the JFK hit out of Montreal via Permindex, there is a the Permindex building still exists. It's in the World Trade Center building, which actually the World Trade Mart and Trade Center were always co-run by the same proprietors of Permindex, and Permindex was kicked out of France. They were for being caught bankrolling two of the 30 assassination attempts on Charles de Gaulle, and de Gaulle basically just said, "Get the hell out." Just at the same time that he was kicking out NATO's headquarters from France, he also kicked out Permindex, saying, "You're not allowed to be here." All this to say, down the street from their headquarters on Saint Jacques Street in Montreal, so you walk about 5 minutes north from Saint Jacques Street, there's a street called John F. Kennedy Street, and right at the beginning of the street, and you could see the Permindex building is a big head of JFK, which we're told is an homage to JFK, a memorial. It is an ugly head that looks like it's melting, bronze like melting, severed head. And in my mind, I'm looking at this thing with my knowledge of like that entire operation and their relationship in killing JFK as well as other leaders, including Enrico Mattei. And I'm thinking, no, that's a trophy.
Yeah, it's
That for
gloating.
those in the know, they look at that and they know exactly what that is.
That's yeah. That's a
uh,
that's a fucking taxidermy moose in a hunting lodge.
Effectively, yeah, that's exactly how
Jesus.
I see it. So that was just in regards to the dart throwing
Good. Lo-
in the smoky little
oh yeah.
rooms at the JFK's picture. I do actually think that there is an element of that ritualistic trophyism. Back to the question though of which we're getting at in terms of the continuity of this very unnatural way of thinking and being that is necessary to maintain a system of controls of the sort that we've come to sort of discover we've been living in for a while. I think personally it's a bit of both. Like the family structure has utility to it, you know, for good or for bad. You know, if your father, grandfather, if you've got a heritage of greatness, that is something which can be used to inspire you to carry on the moral torch of, let's say, a great ancestor, and it does something good for the identity if you're a moral person. Similarly, too, there's certain privileges that if you're told, you know, hey, look, your family has really gained a certain respect and thus prestige, and that uh, guarantees you, or at least affords you certain doors and keys that will be opened. It could also cultivate a certain sense of elitism,
Hmm.
which cuts the individual's identity off from those who are of lower blood, lower families that are below them. That creates a real toxic soil for an identity to grow into, right? And we know that people like Skull and Bones is
Yeah.
one simple low level example of a type of operation that was created in the 1820s, I believe, or maybe early 30s out of Yale, which is a hereditary club. You can't be a member of the club unless your father, grandfather were also members, and then you can get the tap, and then maybe you'll be allowed in. So that's like one low level example of how we see the usefulness of this approach to finding and grooming your next generation managers. And I just say managers because I who's doing the selections, right?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, is it just like some self-feeding thing of like, members selecting members, or is there a higher organizational system managing this type of operation? That's another question. Is it so? How much of it is hereditary and how much of it is cultural? I think that it's a bit of both. But some of these families, like if you actually do look honestly at like there's something called the Brooks Book of Peerage, Burke's Book of Peerage, and it's a useful little book. They publish it every year with an update of just all of the hereditary nobles of the old monarchies of Europe. People who are some of the people in the book are currently tied to the House of Windsor or Saxe-Coburg-Gotha or the Swedish royal family, and they all intermarry. that's the one thing about the Book of Peerage, which goes back many centuries. And you can just they make it public. It's not
Mhm.
secret, and you can just see there's a lot of cousins marrying cousins. Like the Queen of England, who just died, was married to her cousin, same grandma, Queen Victoria. It's a thing that they do, and some of them are pretty far back. They could, that's a very shallow gene pool, and it just gets shallower and shallower.
Yeah.
So there does seem to be the hereditary bloodline incentive is there, but at the same time, we do find, like in my studies of oligarchism, like history as far as oligarchical systems, sometimes families get an alpha family can be taken out.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens. Sometimes a newer family is brought in that didn't really have, as far as I could tell, any precedent.
Um, Hold on, let me shut this one down. Keep
But
talking.
yeah, do what you got to do.
Uh, Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So in that sense, since there is a bit of backstabbing, like there's only so much honor amongst thieves. Like this is like a thief type of power grouping, because the entire idea of their affluence, of their right to have the ownership of the properties, the lands, the farms, the castles, the trusts that they have been born into possessing, it all comes from basically stealing.
Well, yeah.
Like none of it was like earned, created in an honest way. And so you have this hereditary system tied to an idea that we have to maintain our structures of looting, the many who are born into poor families and are thus not privileged to have access to either the means of creating wealth that we enjoy, or the type of knowledge that we have to train our young to have access to, because they're going to have to carry the torch. So there's a transgenerational appreciation that many lower order people born into the normal world just simply don't are not appreciative of this transgenerational mode of thinking, because you have to think in a very specific type of way that allows you to um, appreciate the invisible sort of levers of popular opinion formation, thought control, things that keep the slaves loving their shackles.
Yeah.
That there's that cultural thing too, but they both work together.
What is
So I think
interesting about, sorry, keep going.
no, I was gonna just segue, but no, go for it. Yeah.
Um, Sorry, I think we have like a 1 second delay or something, which always manifests as me cutting off the guest. And yeah, people are like, you gotta stop cutting him off. I'm like, I don't know if there's stop talking. But again, a burden of us lower people that we don't have the faster than light internet. We have the peon internet. But there's something interesting. It's like cheating in professional sports. Like, sure, it's bad, but the reality is that's part of the game. You don't have to like it, right? If you can take out the president and become the president, if you can successfully do a coup, there's no one above that to scold you. I mean, maybe God, but if you can get away, if you can get some untraceable growth hormone, you can become the best athlete ever. Yeah, sure, maybe a century from now they'll uncover evidence and you'll be slandered, but like you'll be gone. If a Michael Jordan or a Tom Brady can find a way to cheat that won't be discovered for another 200 years, they're the top dog. And we can sit there and go, "Oh, they cheated." Cheating's part of the game if you can get away with it. It just is. So to about back to what you're saying about like families and how some of them do get weeded out, there is something interesting about an influx of new families. No, they don't get it. They don't get tapped, right? There is no Skull and Bones or Wolf's Head or Scroll and Key where they go, "You're in." But if your power is so undeniable, if you become a Jeff Bezos or an Elon Musk and you're, you know, just big dick energy, third of $1 trillion, biggest defense. Like Elon Musk is the biggest contractor for the DoD. It's not Northrop. It's not Boeing. It's one dude. That's insane. Like Tom Brady has more championships. The number two place is an entire football franchise. Number one is Tom Brady. So like the biggest defense contractor, it's not General Atomics. It's Elon Musk, and then it's a corporation. So that's undeniable power. you can start to throw your weight around and sort of get into that club by virtue of the fact you control so much. And if you don't let them in, which is probably a big thing, right? There's the your new blood, you're some, my father's money's my father's father, we fucking, we sold slaves to Washington. Who are you with your all right? Well, that's how you're gonna see. You have to remember though, sure, these clubs seem old, but in the grand scheme of things, 300 years is nothing. So at one point, they were new. Harvard was founded in like what, 1604 or some shit? Sure, ancient to us. But at one time, just like it is now 2023, at one point it was the new year, 1604. What's this bullshit startup club, Harvard? Don't they know? Well, add enough time and then it becomes ancient and, monolithic and, oh, Harvard. So the new money, Bezos, Musk, really all of Silicon Valley, big tech, we may look at it as these upstarts, but in the year 2600, you might hear the name Zuckerberg in the same way we talk about like a Prescott Bush or a Carnegie or whatever the fuck, or a Remington. He's part of the DuPont family. Like that might be it. So that power is so undeniable that, back to the cheating thing, you might have a bunch of stuffy, Bush descendants being like, they're not one of us. But doesn't if you have so much money, it doesn't matter. True power doesn't ask permission. They just say, "Fuck Wolf's Head. Y'all a bunch of fucking butt fucking losers. Like, we're gonna make our own club." Like, does that make
Well,
sense?
yeah, I mean, part of it is like there does seem to be like greater and lesser dynastic operatives. Like you have occasionally the granting of a lower uh a, a what I call them is dynastic mercenaries. So
Sure.
if you've done like look at Jacob Rothschild,
Yeah.
right? Today Jacob Rothschild, he's like a big shit, right? And M Rothschilds and Sons, and he's got a lot of operations, a lot of influence, a lot of money. But people are like, oh, it's a Rothschild conspiracy. At the end of the day, it's the Rothschilds who are out to control the world, and they've enslaved the British Empire after setting up the Bank of England, and they got the royalties of Europe indebted to their system. And it's like, wait a minute, where the actual like patriarch of the family that got the ball rolling, so to speak, in the modern age was like Amschel Rothschild,
Yeah.
who was a coin dealer in the 1740s, a
Yeah.
coin dealer.
Yeah.
And he was like, he was commissioned to do certain types of work. He was good at it, and he was given privileges because of his ability to carry out a job.
Yeah.
He was like, he was made a good money lender. He was told, you got to carry out a certain bit of economic warfare on behalf of your patrons, and we will reward you if you do a good job with your usurious, operations. He did. He got a few little like local nobles in debt irreparably to the point that their possessions were confiscated by their opponents. And he was just like carried up the echelons, and he demonstrated that he, like George Soros, he demonstrated that he didn't have the problem of conscience, to bothering him. He just
Just
was able to,
swat it like a fly. Fuck off.
yeah, very, very easy to swat away. And he just had that craving for, just excellence at
Yeah.
doing your job, regardless of how messed up it was. And at a certain point, he was granted, along with some of these other what they used to call Hofjuden, the court Jews. That was a phenomenon that emerged out of the 11th, 12th centuries. The Christian sort of kings had to maintain a veneer of morality, that they weren't carrying out economic warfare immorally against their opponents. So they would utilize they would bring in certain court Jews that in the Talmud there really isn't as much condemnation for the utilization of usury, whereas in like
Mhm.
the Bible or in the Quran, it's a little bit more visceral. Like you shouldn't do that, and they would just use these people as their weapons to carry out economic warfare. And so the Rothschilds were just brought in. They were awarded a little dynastic mercenary privilege for, your kids, your grandkids will be also given certain keys that open doors as long as they continue the family business, and have follow certain rules. They can't just do whatever they want to do. They still have to follow certain rules. And at the end of the day, like, are they ultimately flushable if political expedience demands it to be so, that one or more branches of the family be flushed? Yeah, they're ultimately flushable. We saw it with the emergence of Nazism
Mm-hmm.
in the 1930s and 40s. You know, it's like the Nazis were soft on the Rothschilds, but they were still not friendly. They still confiscated Rothschild property all over Germany. Ultimately, and the Rothschilds, were they happy about the rise of, like, the selection of Nazi fascism as the enforcement ideology of the New World Order that was being brought online back in those days? No, they weren't generally happy about that. They would have preferred a different flavor of fascism that didn't have quite that Hitlerian veneer to it. They would have preferred a Mussolini fascism or something else as something that would be a little bit more accommodating to their desires. But they were flushable. So I think that at the end of the day, there does seem to be um, dynastic powers, but there are new bloods. And I think part of the thing that's of use would be to look at, because in terms of like the question of meritocracy, like, can you, based on your own creative energy and merit, as you just illustrated with the personality traits exhibited by some of these figures you outlined. Not that I really think that Elon Musk is his own man, nor do I think that Jeff Bezos is a great genius. I think that personally that they're cardboard cutouts
Oh,
used
well,
by
well, well,
by
that's part of the thing, is to make it look like it's just you. Tom Brady
yeah,
didn't win a
yeah,
single
yeah.
championship. He was part of a team, but publicly we go Tom Brady.
Yeah, yeah. Well, same thing for Bill Gates. Like, I don't think in my analysis that Bill Gates, I think he's a very controlled cardboard cutout of a personality. I don't think he's a genius. I think he was selected early on as a tool, even by, uh, probably when he was even a teenager. He was selected, and his father has high level connections, as you probably know, to the whole Planned Parenthood, Rockefeller
But
apparatus.
don't
You
forget,
know,
And Bezos's dad and grandpa, they're like old DARPA guys.
yeah, all of these guys have high level, nasty connections to the machine.
Just look
Uh,
sly under the like. Let's just peek under the, and it's DARPA.
yeah. Well,
Let's
same
just
thing
see
for
who is
Michael.
back at CIA.
Yeah, was it IBM, right? I mean, Bill Gates's mom was a high level exec at IBM. They wanted to bring desktop computing into every household, and I think that there was somebody in the PR bureau who's like, you know what, the knowledge of what we did by supplying the Nazis
With
with
Hallworth
all the
machines.
infrastructure for their death camps. It would be bad publicity if people are not ready for that coming into their houses. So let's come up with a new branding, and
Yeah.
we'll have to package it with a character that we can say is like this great universal genius out
And
of his garage.
a nerdy yeah, nerdy,
Trusting.
unsuspecting, you're shucks, white guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's all
Just happens to be really obsessed with viruses and population control for the rest of his life.
just a little, it's his side hobby. Instead of ships in a bottle, it's just how to cull the populations of sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We all have to. Yeah, exactly. We all need to keep ourselves distracted if we're wealthy.
Listen, I play
So,
video games in the evening. He likes to look at, the growth rates of continents. Whatever.
so yeah, there's definitely, like, in the late 19th century, there was a big crisis in management of the British Empire. And that was a very potent period. And I devote a whole book to this. When the empire was on its way out, it was collapsing. It couldn't maintain itself. It had funded, like, the Crimean Wars. It put a lot of like 1854 to 1860 were like the Crimean Wars to try to entrap and ensnare Russia in this unwinnable quagmire against the Ottoman Empire. Kind of like what they did, same model of what they applied later on, a century later, with Zbigniew Brzezinski in
Mm-hmm.
Afghanistan. Same model, same template, but that was Crimea. And that was an Anglo-French operation to just, like, destroy Russia from within. But that was really expensive, and they were, at the same time, they're putting tons of effort into putting down Indian uprisings in 1858, 59, 60. They're still doing war with the Chinese in the Second Opium Wars. They'd put tons of effort and money and logistic support into the Confederate South in the Civil War that had already been prepared for a few decades before the Civil War officially broke out, the British were
Mhm.
heavily invested in breaking up the Union that way. So they had really spread themselves thin, thin, thin. And I think that the world was increasingly also waking up to the the two-facedness of the British Empire, which always tried to project this, we are this liberal, accepting
Mhm.
society that doesn't judge, which is why international terrorist operations like international anarchist terrorists were all found their home base in London. That was like they're welcoming everybody in
Yeah.
and doing the anarchist conferences of 1871 that were carrying out assassinations and hits of leading statesmen and all this stuff. Like this is not new. They call it today. It's Londonistan. Actually, that's what they call London because London has been the center of the selected choice of international headquarters of some of the leading terrorist movements that all found that they're freely allowed to operate in liberal London.
That's so fucking
um,
funny.
yeah, there's
It's
like petitions, open petitions from the government of Mubarak and Hosni Mubarak about 20 years ago to Britain saying, get rid of these terrorist operations. And other governments, Pakistan, India, all wrote letters openly saying to Britain, stop supporting them. They're destroying our society, please. And Britain's like,
yeah.
no, no, we don't judge.
Yeah, that's the fucking point. Hey, America, stop funding Al Qaeda and ISIS. Yeah, it's not an accident.
Yeah, exactly. It's the
It's
same
like
fucking
Hitler
thing.
saying, "Can you stop dropping bombs on my factories? It's impairing my ability to fight you." Huh. It's not an accident, Adolf. We didn't the Norden bomb sites from the B. We didn't just throw B-29s over Dresden for shits and giggles. It's not an accident. So I don't mean to. I always have to kind of make this distinction because like I've reached this. It's I've used this example before. It's like you ever been in like conversation with someone in a car or something, and it kind of goes to a lull, and you're both just driving in silence, but you're still thinking in your head, and then all of a sudden you'll vocalize something, but now you're like 19 degrees separated. You'll be talking about Thanksgiving, and all of a sudden you'll be like, "Yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe Bernie Sanders is a Satanist or something." And person next to you be like, "The fuck?" And you'd be like, "Oh, I kept thinking in my head," and like so like when I like laugh at this stuff, it's because I've done over 1,000 of these episodes since I started the podcast. I think I've read about 150 audiobooks and like from 1900 to 2000, and I've reached this point now where I just look at it and like I can't help but just laugh at like the evilness of it because like there's nothing to it's all every time you think you've found the bottom of the rottenness you pick it up and they're just even more roaches. So like I don't mean to like laugh at like the genocide and the assassin, but you reach a point where you're like, I mean, it's almost it's almost funny at how dark it is. It's
Mhm.
so sorry that's why I laugh.
No,
I'm like
dude, no,
it's
I
just
get
all
that.
so fucked.
I completely get that. But I think that's the thing. Like when you people, I think they treat it too seriously because of their ignorance. They look at the obvious case of secret power expressing evil designs and intentions and just rotten ideas. They see that and it's a very intimidating thing because they didn't know it most of their lives, and all of a sudden, whatever their
Here it is.
experiences that caused that shook them out of their normie state of mind, they're like, fuck, like crisis trauma. That's a natural set of emotions to process.
Because
But then
they're
they
good
stop
people.
short.
Well,
But they stop thinking about it and they start treating it as it wants to be treated. Like the those oligarchical agencies want those who become aware of them to
fear.
treat them as if they were like superhuman deities, gods, lording above the mortals. They want that projection because it renders us completely impotent to do anything about it on the one hand. Um, and partially it probably feeds their egos a little bit too. They probably get a
Mm-hmm.
kick out of it. Like there's this video of like Prince Philip in a little obscure Bushman village in Africa, which is carrying him like on their backs. And in this village, they treat him like a god, and they have a shrine with Prince Philip's picture that was given to them in like 1954. And they worship this thing. They sacrifice incense to it. They kill animals to it, and they go there and they all worship the guy, and he gets a kick out of it. The racist. He's dead now, but this racist shit. Like he goes there, and you can just see the footage of him just like
In
it's like a big
Glee.
joke for him, but he loves it. So I can only imagine that when it comes to being treated like they actually have these superhuman powers, they really do enjoy the feeling of like how these frightened mortals are afraid of them.
Hmm.
Kind of, but on the other hand, when you actually you keep pushing on it, you keep scratching it, and you start seeing how utterly pathetically insane this thing is too. Like there's self-identity, and I would suggest that anybody who wants to have a healthy chuckle at this, read Edgar Allan Poe from this light, because what Edgar Allan Poe is actually doing in a lot of his stories, he's there's been like a lot of effort by his enemies since the day he died to try to portray him as this macabre opium fiend, only to be read on Halloween or something. But if you actually look at Edgar Allan Poe, the man, and what he was a part of in terms of trying to give a depth of understanding to his fellow Americans in the 1830s and 40s. He died in 1848. Very mysterious, probably murdered. Um, and then his character was murdered after he died under tons of anyway, that's a whole other side thing. But what he was trying to do was give them a better depth and appreciation into the essence of evil, the essence and the designs of evil. So you will always fall for it if you're just projecting your own naive innocence onto the external world. In the real world that we're living in, there are these forces, these agencies that do evil, that think evil. And it's so unnatural that for most people, like H.G. Wells said, the greatest power that the British Empire has going into the 20th century, and he said this in like 1904, is people's unwillingness to think of evil. And because we do project our own inner goodness onto the other. And so Poe, being the man he was and being part of the operations he was a part of, and he was tied to the Society of Cincinnati, he was tied to American intelligence, people like James Fenimore Cooper, General Thayer, others, were highly involved with intelligence operations, good ones, like actual noble patriots. And he was really trying to bring people a better appreciation that you have to get into the shoes, get vicariously, don't become evil, but you have to get into the mindset of somebody who's like in the Imp of the Perverse, the character who was the first person narrator of Imp of the Perverse, who's like going through his messed up mental gymnastics that he had to play with himself to result in murdering unnecessarily an innocent person. And you could just see the insanity, but the logical insanity of what this person did. Or he does it also in the Black Cat, or he does it in the Telltale Heart. Like, get into the mindset of somebody who drives themselves into doing evil and loving it, but then also undermining and undoing themselves too, because they have this little conscience too, kind of pulling at them and scratching away at them, which is the whole point of the Telltale Heart, or the Black Cat, or the Imp of the Perverse. Same thing. There's like, you discover at the end of the story that the guy himself is like waiting to be executed now for his crimes, because he couldn't keep the secrets in. He just had to blurt it out. But Poe is really also like, he's hilariously making fun of it in the story of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather. He's making fun of the oligarchical psychology. Same thing so a lot of his stories do this, and we don't appreciate that, but it's liberating and it's empowering, because you sort of don't, you treat this thing as it deserves to be treated, as this pathetic parasite that lies to itself and projects images onto the masses, right, who are then expected to believe in mythologies that are cooked up for us, that really just keep us moving like a little herd towards a slaughterhouse, undermining our own beautiful potential to be something much more than what we are. And I think for me, like that, as far as like all the details of Baphomet, Satan worshiping, Templars, like you can go into this stuff, and it's like you can keep pulling threads and threads, and it's like it goes pretty deep. But I think more valuable than all of that, and it's valuable to still do some of that work to appreciate it a little bit, is that there's a simple consistency that whether it's 2,000 years ago, or whether it's 100 years ago, or today, or tomorrow, the oligarchism as a phenomenon, just independent of what particular families come and go, have certain universal constants like invariance. And among those invariants, include, I think, the topmost is the idea that your right to control is something which is given to you by your hereditary thing, like whatever it is. that the masses have to be kept in a state where they believe that shadows are their reality, and the shadow casters, the masters, like in what Plato is
Allegory
exposing
of
in
the
his
cave.
allegory of the cave in the Republic. The power to control the light cast by the flame that casts the shadows and the sounds onto the cave wall, that people, then the masses, are led to believe or expected to
Is
believe are
reality.
reality, which they're not, have to be reserved for a special, a special elite. And ultimately, that because we're cattle, because human beings should be defined as nothing but talking cows, that we have to have our populations kept under control. That can be done through things like managed wars, where you get the slaves to fight each other over whatever prejudice you can inflame, whatever sense of scarcity you can inflame. Like if you can get everybody just addicted to something which is scarce that they feel that they need, then there's going to be less and less of that, so that that tribe and that tribe will be more inclined to like clash.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they have so many points of self-interest in common to work together, they won't tend to do it. um and if there's like less and less food production, again, you can start triaging, find ways of like logically concluding that we'll have to like eliminate this person or this weak grouping in our society in order, instead of keeping them alive. That sort of thing goes back to ancient Roman Empire days. Like we could see evidence of that even before that. So I always try to encourage people to like look at, well, what does oligarchism do? Don't fixate so much on the particular individuals who come and go or the names of the families. That might be useful, and it is useful, but don't fixate on that. It's like trying to find like, well, who was the individual or individuals who killed JFK
Yeah, who
for
pulled
the
the
three
trigger?
different.
Not
Huh?
entire. Yeah, it's who killed JFK. Important, but not important. Like it happened.
Exactly.
A power structure took him out undemocratically.
Yeah. Bam.
Yeah,
Right there. Like, what were the names of like the three different shooters in the behind the grassy
yeah.
knoll, and
It's
the other triangulated operation, and like how are they?
were they
It's like at the
mafia
end of
or
the day, who cares? Like, what
KGB?
was JFK doing? Whose power was he challenging? How
Yeah,
was he doing it? And why was it covered up? Maybe but like asking those questions is so much more valuable at getting insights than simply trying to nitpick. And I've seen people who wasted years of their lives, decades of their lives, just focusing on details, and they
chasing down
forget.
those. Yeah, and it like it is important. Like you definitely need to, if you can find out, but it's more so we're looking at like the patterns. Like Alan Watts, always the philosopher, would always talk about, like you need to look at life and society and themes of morality and philosophy. Like forget like the era you're in, forget the technology. Are we writing on papyrus or are we using laptops? Like forget all of that. You'd be like, look at it like a stream when you see a whirlpool in a stream. You're not focused on which water particles are in there, which ball. No, it's always changing. Sometimes there's a leaf, sometimes there's silt, sometimes it's raining, sometimes the river's a little lower. No, there are patterns. You see like the white caps, you see the rapids, you see the whirlpools and the waterfalls. That's the structure. Everything else is sure you can look at it, but don't get lost in it, right? Was it LBJ and Bush Sr.? Was it DeMorenfield and was it the okay? Was it James Jesus Angleton? It doesn't. It was the head of CIA counterintelligence, and CIA is a coalescence of business interests and power. That's the importance. What was JFK? It doesn't matter if it was JFK or if his name was Bob fucking Carrigan or Matt Ehret. Like, it doesn't matter. What was he doing? He was saying, let's not do perma war, right?
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
the importance. It doesn't like that doesn't is it the the slave driver whipping the people picking the cotton or whipping the guys building the pyramids? Millennia apart, different continents, same idea. Just
Team operating system, exactly. No, that's very well said, Tommy. Very well said. No, and I agree. Like I've used this example as well for some people who, there's so many different ways of looking at it. But if you're in a hurricane, it might be, it's obviously going to be very scary, very chaotic.
yeah,
Cows will be flying and shit. It's going to be like insane. You won't see a lot of order. But if you're looking from a satellite view down upon the earth at the same hurricane, you start seeing structure of the vortex. Yeah,
yeah.
you're like, okay, there's a coherence to that. I get it. Okay, but you have to move your mind's eye out of, when you're in the process. Sometimes it's
It's
hard to
it's yeah.
make sense of.
There's
Um,
there's almost like a Buddhist, not even Buddhist to put a label on, or like Zen or meditate. There's like a meditative detachment almost, where you just look at it and you're like, these are just like laws unfolding. No one, there's no like a there's no opinion on, I think this glacier should break off and carve through that mountain over a million years. It's just laws unfolding of different, of atomic laws, molecular laws, electrostatic, water fluidity, and temperature inversion. It's no one invented like the Himalayan mountain range. It's just laws unfolding of tectonic plates hitting each other. And it's different with us because there's consciousness and free will, but there is still something interesting about just sitting back and watching it unfold. Like new power arising and like a new set of oligarchs and Silicon Valley and tech gods. And the next one after that will be, to quote the author Christian Davenport, space barons. Like they will be the next, right? And it doesn't mean that you can't, you should, that also doesn't mean that you can just shirk any responsibility. Like if you see wrongdoing, okay, you're probably not going to take down the CIA, but like you can bring $10 of toilet paper to the homeless shelter if you can, like, if you can make that happen. Like you can still do good. You shouldn't just watch laws unfolding and like watch your friend get depressed and kill himself or something. I lost a brother to suicide in 2014. Like that doesn't mean you should just sit back and watch these things, but in a way you can with like the giant themes of countries, and we're watching in slow motion just China rising, right? We're watching America and Russia. Are we rekindling a Cold War? It is, you can almost watch it just like the seasons changing, like icicles melting and
Mhm.
or like new flowers coming. You can just and again, it's very easy because I'm in an air conditioned apartment and clean clothes. I went to the gym. I got a full night's sleep. It's very easy for me to sit back and watch just like some detached royalty. Like there's some book talking about like the original Harriman brothers meeting with some general in Japan in like 1920, and they're all drinking tea on top of this hotel, watching like riots in the streets, and they're just like parsing out who's gonna fund the new railroads. Meanwhile, they're just people getting like gored by police on the streets, and they're like, very interesting, bully. Like, but but it does allow you to see kind of more clearly instead of getting lost in it. You
Yeah,
just
yeah.
start to view it as power structures just kind of flowing back and forth.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a book written end of the 19th century called short book. It's almost like a long essay called The Flatlands. You ever hear about that one? It's a decent little book. It's basically thought experiment of a scenario, a storyline is weaved of creatures that exist only in the two-dimensional space, and all of a sudden, somebody from
Oh,
a three-dimensional world is
I've
like
watched
thrown
Carl
into it.
Sagan's little like
Oh yeah, he's played with that
documentary
idea.
thing on
So
it. Yeah.
a lot of people play with the idea, and it has some like a lot of conceptual
Yeah.
value from the vantage point of somebody who only believes and their senses are tuned to a two-dimensional mode of space.
Yeah.
Seeing a cube coming into
Yeah.
your realm, you will
Yeah.
interpret it as if it were either a hexagon or a
Yeah.
square or some other shape. When you do a projection, let's say of a cube, and you have a shadow from a cast from the cube on a flat surface, that shadow will be a two-dimensional surface,
Yeah.
and you won't be able
You see
to
the
recognize very easily that it's a cube. Yeah, it's
yeah.
actually a cube. Um, so I mean, certain whether you are somebody who is cultivated and fueled your conscience, your heart to develop in tandem with your mind, or whether you're somebody who has let your heart muscles stagnate and atrophy in favor of just the mind part growing, which is I think the problem of oligarchism is there's like this hypertrophied logic side,
Yeah.
but it's not tempered by love. It's not tempered by
The scratch
conscience.
unconscious, the little
Yeah,
they've cut the finger off.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, they sever good. So in that sense, both individuals, like let's say a Plato, who I believe is somebody who I've read all of Plato's dialogues, and I'm not at all persuaded that those who say that Plato was a fascist, I think that they've probably read things out of context or just one thing. out of context without seeing um, his work as a whole within a context of a political fight, which he was waging as a person, not just as an ivory tower philosopher. But Plato himself demonstrates in a lot of his dialogues the purpose of morality as not just something which is created by the weak to cause the strong to lose power, which is the way that let's say somebody like there's a character named Callicles within the Gorgias dialogue who maintains that like that. Yeah, morality is not something the wise man and the true philosopher discovers and he knows that morality is just an abstract chimera created by the weak to take away power from those who are strong and more fit to control the weak. And so we have to transcend right and wrong and morality. And that's a true philosopher. It's effectively will to power. We learn to just impose our will to satisfy our lusts, to create more lusts and more power to satisfy those lusts. And Plato's like, but aren't you, or Socrates is like, but aren't you creating like sort of a sieve with more and more holes? And every time you're pouring liquid into them, you're just, it's pouring out. And you just need to rush faster and faster hectically to keep on filling. And he's like, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's the true good. That's the truthful good of the philosopher, and to punish your enemies. And so, Socrates just dismantles these things elegantly again and again and again. Now, Socrates is thinking from a three-dimensional standpoint in a certain way and trying to, and that's the whole point of his allegory of the cave, is to help people understand how to think with the mind's eye, to think in volume, even though your eyes are only like accepting surface two-dimensional appearance,
Mm-hmm.
So the mind's eye is more than the sum total of the five senses. The five senses are useful, but they are not added together. What limits what the mind does when it's being healthy. Now the differences between, like, let's say a Callicles or a Gorgias who also thinks this way. Callicles and Gorgias don't think that anything should, because they reject the idea that moral principles are somehow connected to the laws of the universe. They reject that outright. They just think that there's laws that are just these rules in the cold domain of the universe that cause things to like fall down according to, like, they didn't call it gravity, but
Sure.
whatever. There's rules, but they sever the inner moral world of humans from that external cold dead universe that they presume exists. So that the humans, all we can do is will to power until we die, and then there's like really nothing, or whatever your theory might be. But whereas an Augustine or a Plato or a Thomas More or Ben Franklin, when you read their writings, they're of the view that no, we have to think on the higher level, but have it be tempered by again the sense that there's natural law, that man's law has to always come ever more into conformity with the laws of God's creation in some way. Like they call it different things, but there's like this idea that there's like a harmony in the universe, and that our world will always be in disharmony to the degree that we don't allow the laws we create for ourselves to become better, to match God's law. And so oligarchs are really good at making the bad appear good, or bad laws appear good laws that are actually designed to enslave and destroy us. And the good laws that were actually protecting us, we end up being foolish enough to, like, look at Glass-Steagall, right? Like they spent 60 years getting their idiot victims in America to become convinced that Glass-Steagall was preventing them from earning wealth. And finally, under Bill Clinton, right, they struck it down, and all of a sudden, this was the law that was keeping the banks from merging and becoming too big to fail. And we were told, oh, that's holding back your ability to have creative innovation and to have real, like, liberal free markets. That law is holding you back. So we finally were championing Bill Clinton for killing it. And then what happens? It's not
10
like we
years
got more
later,
competition, right?
yeah.
That was a good law. So yeah, it's always about this balance of morality at the end of the day.
There is that, like, I mean, there is a separation, right? Between, yeah, you view the world as just cold, unthinking matter that's obeying laws. It's just marbles bouncing around, right? It forms galaxies and deer and clouds and music, but it's just shit, right? And we're just observing it. And then there's this weird separation where we're not part of it, right? It's like when you're stuck in traffic and you go, I'm stuck in traffic, and it's like, no, you are traffic. But we have this weird thing that because we're observing it, it's not us. But
Mhm.
why wouldn't it be that? I mean, I guess you would then have to get to, does matter create, you know, is I think it all kind of comes down to, does consciousness, is it created by the brain or is it detected by the brain? Because if it's created by the brain, that means, and the brain is a creation of the cold matter bouncing around and obeying laws, right? Because
Mhm.
that's all biology is again just matter bouncing around in an orderly fashion. If if the mind is created by the brain, by the physical neurons and glials and electric and shit and potassium potentials, and then we would have to be a creation of this universe, and therefore we are directly obeying the laws of it. But if you
Mhm.
think that we are not part of it, then we are truly observers, then you would say that we're not part of it. Does that make sense? Like,
Mhm.
how do I put this
It
more
does.
how do I put this more clearly? Like, if you're playing a video game, everything in the video game is in that universe. But that does, just because you're playing it doesn't mean you're one of them. Like, you might be playing a game of wizards and witches and shit, but that doesn't mean that you obey those laws. Versus when you read about history and, all the old themes of, yeah, the ego, the empire stretching itself thin, the person getting all the money and then betraying their family. Like, no, no,
Mhm.
you're that. You are that. You are no different than that. Versus if you're completely removed from it, which is an interesting thing then. So if you're part of it, there is like a weird inversion there, because they're saying that, we're separate from morality. That's just a thing that's going on in the world that we're projecting onto it. If you're part of the universe, of this cold, unacting universe, then that means you should actually obey morality. And if you're removed from it, which opens the door of, like, so are you this ethereal creature or in sentience, that all of a sudden gives us leeway to not obey the rules of morality. So if you're
Mhm.
so if you're some
Mhm.
ineffable spirit, then all of a sudden you can go, fuck it all. But if you're part of it, I don't know. I'm kind of tying my own brain into knots now.
Oh, I think this is so valuable, because that I think gets us into part of the psychodynamics, the neurotic disorder of the oligarchical psychology, which is a tendency to artificially sever the self subjectively from the whole objective process outside of the self, and then to try to manipulate or manage that system as if you're not a part of it, as if
Yeah.
you're almost like, let's say, a substitute deity
Yeah.
managing from outside the system the behavior of the parts. And it's like, last time I
No, yeah,
you're there. You're born as a human in a womb. Your parents had sex. You were the product of that. You're a human, and you are trying. You've gotten yourself into a mental map, or
you've
a set of mental
detached.
traps or
Yeah.
assumptions that you built upon fallaciously. Each one being fallaciously built upon another false assumption. That you've weaved and constructed a whole worldview that might seem very sophisticated and intricate and interesting to you and very persuasive, and but despite that, it's been wrong from the get-go. It was wrong, and now you're in a place where you are trying to act like a giant. Your ego is in total control. You think you're God, and you've then created, either you've absorbed or accepted stories that reinflame that were passed on from people like your grandparents, and people who from your class who thought just like you did, or in that misguided way. They created whole stories and narratives to convince you. Let's say, look at the Kabbalah, right? That's a big part of the language, or the initiation process of the ancient and accepted rites of Scottish Rite Masonry, and other branches of Masonic lodges. Just read Albert Pike, and he's very clear. He pays a lot of attention. He loves the Kabbalah. They're obsessed with that. Well, one of the problems is that it does, part of the assumption is that every the true initiate, the wise person, realizes that they are literally God. Not that they partake in God, but that they literally
Yeah, they
are
are
God.
the Godhead. Yeah.
and there's no other everything is just a projection of your own desires and perceptions that don't really have ontological reality beyond them just being um, you are all that that is perceived to exist.
You are, yeah.
Um,
There is nothing
and then
more.
everything else is kind of you could play with. And part of this too is if you look at people like Descartes, who was a very influential mind as far as somebody whose thoughts were really promoted and shaped the Enlightenment age and today's educational system are very permeated by Cartesian theories, concepts. But Descartes himself is a bit of a toxic, um, uh, underdeveloped personality trait himself. The guy was an abused, underdeveloped, he was a mercenary. He was always just sort of like being played with or being used by higher patrons. He just wanted to he was obsessed with material comfort. And he himself said, the laws of reasoning, one must always presume that nothing exists.
Mhm.
That's his first, like literally in his rules of reasoning, presume nothing exists. And then the only thing, and he goes by like negation. Okay, you think red exists? Well, this person sees red differently. Thus, you can't assume red
Yeah,
exists. Round seems differently for you. And then he goes through one of these typical things that all philosophy relativists go through. It's like it sounds original and unique, but it's really not. And Plato makes fun of this in the Protagoras dialogue 2,000 years before Descartes. That man is the measure of all things, and thus there is no ontological reality. And Plato's just making fun of this thing, destroying it. But all that to say, he says the only thing that then we can assume exists is ourselves because we think. Now that is not a sufficient reason to even have faith in the mind, because he doesn't even ask the question, well, why does the mind exist? Why does thinking exist?
well,
He
that
doesn't ask the question.
he doesn't go one step further. He goes, I think, therefore I am. And it's like, no, there is, therefore I. Like I think. No, no, you're think what? What is thinking? It's
Yeah,
yeah.
what is it? Why is it? Why do you think?
The wit,
Like,
yeah, the
animals don't seem to have the same type of thinking as you do, as
they
humans
are,
do. So,
but are they or are they not? Just period. Are they? No, they
yeah,
are. So therefore they are, right?
that
Well,
would be
they
a
are because
healthier
I'm
ground
thinking
to
of
build on.
them. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's I mean like the spoiler alert, it really does all just come down to there's something going on. Now, obviously that's limited because we're putting it into words that humans speak, but I mean like there is. If you just get really still, don't say anything, there is. There isn't nothing. That's that's the lowest level of observation you can make, and it also never really goes past that. There is.
yeah. Well, part of it is, I think, there's an element of faith. Like this is where I think the question of like pure logic cannot be ever removed from faith entirely, because at the end of the day, it's true that we have to give our faith to the sort of like grounded assumption that there is other than us. Like I, or you accept, like a lot of people will say, well, maybe we're just holograms, or maybe we're just living in a giant video game created by being played by some kid in some alternative universe, right? Like there's all sorts of
But it still
theories,
is.
multiverse.
Where did that come
Huh?
from? It still is. Where
No, you
yeah,
can't. They just kick the can down the road,
you
right?
can't get to the bottom of it. The witness
Yeah.
is that now. What is no? The observer is not the observed. You can't any realization you come to when you're meditating, you're like, oh, I'm having these. It's what again Alan Watts would call it. So it's like when the criminal runs into the house and the cops chase him, so he runs to the second floor and the cops are on the first floor. So the cops run to the second floor, so he runs to the third. It never ends. You just every observation you have, there's still who's observing it. Well, I'm thinking about thinking. Well, who's thinking that? It just goes for there is nothing to reach. You can't. It just
Well,
sorry.
I was just talking to a friend of mine. We were talking a little bit about the the uh, the incommensurability between human beings and what we do in our behavior, and how we engage with the periodic table and nature and everything else, which is very different from how chimpanzees, monkeys, and wolves and other things engage with the periodic table and nature. And it's an incommensurable modality. And so because there's this incommensurability, obviously like naive interpretations of Darwinian selection, natural selection, don't accommodate the qualitative differentiation it falls far short to explain these discontinuous leaps that we tend to find throughout the fossil records. We tend to find it also in more developed forms of society, of life. And so a lot of people will then immediately jump to, well, thus it was aliens who came here, and we have different variants of it. Some the popular one is like they infuse their
Their
alien DNA
DNA
with
into
some
our
like
bullshit
monkey
goop.
DNA, made a
Yeah.
hybrid. Yeah, you got it in Prometheus, the pre-aliens movie too, as a variant. But and they're like, that's the satisfying explanation that could account for these discontinuities. And it's like, okay,
No, it
sure,
doesn't.
let's play with that a little bit. What was this other planet that this other advanced civilization
Well,
evolved
Matt, you
from?
don't understand. They're an alien creation.
Well, that's the thing, right? Did they have primitive alien monkeys that were then fused with DNA hybrid wise from an even older advanced alien civilization that found them? And well, what about that one?
Well,
Was that one also?
you don't get it, dude. They've too were, and then the whole thing's a simulation. Well, who created the simulation? Aliens who were infused with it. You're looking into it when you're at a grocery store and you go to the produce section and there's the mirrors on either side, and you look into it and it goes for infinity. That's the only fucking answer. There is no try to tell them that, and they go, no, aliens made the mirrors. Blow my head off.
I know. No,
It's just
but it's unfortunate because it wears the appearance of depth and profundity
oh,
when people,
it's
usually when they're stoned.
yeah.
We've all just had this experience. We've all been stoned, talking philosophically about this sort
Where'd
of
you
thing, and all of a
from
sudden
it?
you're like, "Whoa, this is the most deep thought I've ever had." And then a couple of days later, you're thinking back to that, and you're like,
That's
"Hmm."
fucking retarded. That's the dumbest thing I've ever thought of in my life. Yeah, because then you naturally go, well, who created the aliens? And you're like, oh, we just really walked up to that event horizon when we were high and then thought we figured it all out. Oh, aliens made the pyramids. Well, how'd they build them? Fuck off. Don't look any deeper than that. I had a friend
Well,
in
then you get
college.
some variants, right?
Yeah.
Like then you have the Netflix now, which by the way, Netflix is run by who Netflix is run by?
Didn't like Obama buy it or some shit?
He has an interest in it. Yeah, a
Okay.
big financial interest, but
And
it's not
again,
him.
I just,
It's actually the director is Edward Bernays' grandnephew.
Jesus Christ. Wait, hold on. Hey, I gotta go pee real quick. Not that,
Yeah,
let me
dude.
just put a pin on this. Tell everybody where to find your books and social media and stuff.
I'll just wait. I'll assume that Tommy is going to edit this out.
No, I'm not.
No, you're not? All
I'm not
right.
gonna
Well,
edit
I'll
that,
speak
dude.
very
I'll do it
slowly.
once.
All right. So the books can be found, I'll speak slowly, on CanadianPatriot.org. They can also be found on Amazon as paperback and Kindle. You can go to um, risingtidefoundation.net, where a lot of the other content associated with the books can be found, especially with a focus on educational material, symposia, lectures, weekly readings, and workshops, which happen every Sunday and Wednesday afternoon, evening. The other books, if you get tired of the Clash of the Two Americas, volumes 1 through 4, you can always engage in the other previous set of books on the Untold History of Canada, volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4, which will soon be filled out with a volume 5 coming soon. That can also be found on CanadianPatriot.org. The Untold History of Canada may sound like something that may only interest Canadians, but I promise you it has an international context and matters probably even more to Americans who care about the world situation than simply Canadians. What I try to do in the Untold History of Canada book series is reconstruct in a new and what I believe is for the first time a proper reading is or a more truthful reading than has ever been told of Canada from 1774 all the way up until 1971, which is sort of the breakoff point, featuring volume 1, which deals with why Quebec, which was all of Canada at the time of the American Revolution, failed to accept the Ben Franklin challenge to become the 14th colony participating in the Continental Congress of 1776. That entire story is told in volume 1, written by an old colleague of mine named Pierre Baudry. I did the foreword. Volume 2 goes through the period of Canada around the time of Abraham Lincoln and Canada's potential to become an independent sovereign republic and how that was sabotaged by turning us into a monarchy, and the only monarchy of North America, whereby Lincoln's murder was carried out, later on followed up by JFK, whose murder is told in detail in volume 3. There you go. Here, I'll stop now. I was just
No, that
rambling.
was brilliant. No,
Okay.
so some people think I edited it out. I'm like, bro, I'm not editing it. It's just it's time for you to do your plugs. Some
It's a
people,
pain in the ass, I know.
no, no, no.
It's YouTube, right? You or it's Rumble or whatever it is. You control your own timeline. So yeah, people can bounce around.
Yeah, well, that's the other part. I think it's I'm like it's not live. Like you did edit it out. I'm like the time that took you to comment that you could have just gone forward. Plus,
Below space, yeah.
plus I just imagine kind of like I don't know, like the Bushes, like HW, HW, like manipulating data. They had a George Bush who worked for the CIA that was in Dallas, but it wasn't George H.W. Bush. It was another George Bush. But he was in, there was a CIA agent named George Bush in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, that wasn't H.W. Bush. And it's like the foresight that motherfucker had to to cover his so I like to imagine that one day, down the timeline of censorship and wokeism, as I will eventually, years from now, be tried for this podcast I have full of hate speech and wrong think. My my legal escape will be that there's a minute or two every episode where I'm not present, and I'll be like, I don't know what they said, so therefore the whole thing's vitiated. It's all none of it counts anymore. That assumes that there's a just system, but
Yeah, I'm sure the Gestapo operating the legal courts are gonna definitely respond
oh,
well.
he had a good. There you go. Yeah, actually, that's retarded because the whole idea is that as we become a tyrannical dictatorship, they won't give a fuck. They'll fuck off, whatever. Just shoot me. Yeah, but sorry. Before my rude bathroom break, Edward Bernays' relative or descendants run Netflix. I mean, it's back to the laughing thing. Like
It's absurd. It really is theater of the absurd.
they
And
used to have, as Tim Dillon said, yeah, people are like, well, yeah, they used to have bread and circus and then mindlessly eat garlic knots and watch Netflix. It's like those people back then were so easily controlled. Uber Eats and Netflix. And it's like, bro, it's all still here. It's all right here. It's never ended. They were so easily controlled back then. They just had circus and bread and then just like on to the next episode of binge watching.
yeah, yeah, the destruction of potential that has occurred under the modern bread and circus is just, and yeah, just the lack of self-reflection, and the ability to situate yourself within a historical continuity, because we tend to think, again, it's part of this
The
as above,
removal
so
of
as
the
below, right?
mind.
Like
Yeah.
yeah, as the oligarchies, we all tend to take on or have some of the traits of somebody we give our admiration to or has influence over a system, that leader's influence, whether it's a good teacher or a bad teacher, um, a good leader like a Martin Luther King or a crap leader like an Obama, some character of their morality or immorality is going to be expressed at every level holographically down the system that they're influencing, for good or for bad. And I think that, when you're dealing with the oligarchy with their God complex, you have like a little bit of this disassociation of the individual from the whole that the oligarchy themselves are carried by, is this separation of this dualism of the other and them. Um, and all the way down, like people binge watching Netflix and just getting lost in escapism, whatever it may be, are also increasingly disassociating themselves from the whole that they're a part of. So they look at history, and instead of seeing something that they're directly connected to as a
Mm-hmm.
process that's shaping your entire world in being and culture and identity, instead of seeing that, you're just seeing, oh yeah, it's a voyeuristic thing, right? It's a consumer society thing. Like, oh yeah,
And
bread
then
and
it,
circuses in Rome or crusades. How stupid was that? People were fighting over like, the Holy
it's
Land and
you're
having
look
religious wars. And it's like,
you're looking
dude,
at you're a domino and you're looking at a mile of dominoes before you and you're just watching it all tumble as it's getting closer to you, you're like, man, those fucking dominoes. You're just like it's it is the it yeah. You look back, I think it was Ray Kump, is this comedian, but he had a great Tim Dillon and Ray Kump are both morbidly obese comedians, but they're so fucking intelligent and they talk about Alan Dulles and Devil's Chessboard and Family of Secrets and all that stuff. But he goes, we've really done such a good job in this country of, and I love this. Clearly, I love this place. but doesn't mean you can't shit on it. He goes, we've done such a good job of American exceptionalism, where like we look at every other country, both currently and in the past, and all of the human traits of corruption, of like treasonous plundering of the treasury, of everything. And then when it gets to us, we just go, yeah, but we wouldn't do that. Like we look at other like like Michael Hastings, right? The journalist who was what did he remember when his remember he was writing that story on Petraeus and then his like
Oh, his car blows up, right, or something,
car
or
like accelerated to like twice the speed it was capable of and the engine block blew out and ran like 3 blocks and
oh yeah,
you tell that story and say it happened in Russia, they go, "Oh, Putin had him whacked." Happens here, we go, "Huh, something's wrong with the car." Like it's
yeah.
so it just it stops. The reflection stops. Where you go, "How do people get addicted to these things?" Like right? And then you go get a tooth removed or something and they give you a week's worth of Vicodin. And you're like, "Well, I'm only just going to take it for the week." And then, after a week, you're like, "Well, I still kind of need some, so I'll go buy some." Other people get addicted though, not me. And it's like, it doesn't, you're doing like an autopsy on a human, forgetting that you're a human. There is, but I guess that's how you get into the mind of the people that think that they control the whole thing, is they're disconnected from it. Which I meant to ask you earlier. Is that a, is that an advantage or a disadvantage to, you get tapped, you're part of this elite, you're part of the fucking, you're part of the higher class, and it gives you a sense of deserving. Oh, I'm not a dumb pig. I rigged the stock market. I'm in control of the military industrial complex. On one hand, logic would say that that would be disadvantageous, right? Tom Brady's son is never going to practice as hard because he thinks well, I'm a Brady, versus if you don't think you're good, you're going to work so much harder to become the best.
Mhm.
But it seems like this is a weird case where normally being part of a line of champions would make you lazier and thus less likely to become a champion because you feel entitled to it. In this case, it's almost beneficial because it allows you to sever that finger of consciousness scratching you and go, no, 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 no. Like, these people are
Yeah.
cattle.
Yeah, I guess it really depends on what you value. And if you're the sort of person who's learned to appreciate the value of the health of your soul, um, yeah, you would see that as a big disadvantage, though materially that particular person would have a lot of material advantages over the majority. But but if they don't care, if they don't believe that they have a soul, first off, or if they believe that they have it and just learn not to care about its health and well-being or how it gets sicker, then they would be okay with that being tapped on the shoulder. And I thought there was a good movie. It might have had some insidious stuff to it, but for a lower order Hollywood production, I thought it was a decent little, insightful um, investigation. Have you seen The Good Shepherd? With
No.
I think it was Matt Damon, Robert De Niro was in it. It's like 2014 or so. It was a decent little movie on like somebody who's basically tapped into skull and bones. Their parents were part of it, or their dad was a part of it. That's Matt Damon's character, and he ends up. It's very, very closely aligned to a true story of, I think, I forget if it's James Jesus Angleton, or another character, I forget. But it just goes through the deadening of his soul in the process of becoming integral within the machine, as a bonesman, and then watching his own son being absorbed into it later on during the Cold War. And man, it's pretty good. I thought it was first degree insight good. Um, but as far as your original question of, does that is it really a disadvantage or an advantage? I mean, I think if you have faith that human beings are made in the image of a creator, through and are endowed with these potentials that could be cultivated like a garden, like you got to put a lot of effort into cultivating your garden, and if you don't, give the proper sunlight, water, nutrition. It'll grow either it'll just die or it'll grow bad fruit or it'll be warped. There's a certain, I think, sense or science of metaphysics, or there's a metaphysical component to all of this, I think, whereby there, just like there's universal constants to what evil does to control others and control themselves. I think there's also universal constants to what natural mature, because our bodies are always going to mature no matter what. That's not our choice. Our bodies will mature and will die if we're able to eke out a living. But there's no such guarantee that the mind or the heart will also mature. There's all sorts of ways for those invisible properties to become warped, made infantile, made brought to war with itself in a variety of ways. Like there's so many ways to misstep along the path of wisdom and find yourself in a situation where you're an idiot wearing who thinks you're wise. That's the worst. That Plato always got it, or Socrates always was making the point. Like, at least I know that I don't know things, whereas I'm better off than most people that hate me because they think they know things that they don't know. Whereas because I know what I don't know, I'm in a better place. I'm capable of making a discovery, whereas they are not, because they're so convinced that they've already made their discoveries. So I think to that extent, it's a tragic thing that people give into that oligarchical set of cultural norms that they're brought into, because they lose something that would have made them happier and more integrated individuals had they selected something else. And it's not always their fault, because they're born into and groomed often from an early age, and you're like, that's bad. I feel bad for some of these kids born into these super like blue blood situations. Yeah, like I don't think Harry or William are all that happy kids. I don't think they had a happy childhood growing up, and I think they're kind of messed up really badly right now. But I don't see any signs like that they're integrated, happy, whole people by and large.
Yeah, would you and I be any different if we were born into those families? Would we be
There
pulling
are
the same
case
strings?
studies of people who break from profile. In my research in history, I do find that there are examples, like
Well, well,
quick easy
Buddha,
example, JFK. We've been talking about JFK. He was born into a certain family that had sort of played a certain set of
bootlegging, fucking
bootlegging, doing other criminal
election
activity,
rigging, just
all sorts of, like, yeah, there was some nasty stuff that we know that the Kennedys, that Joe Kennedy
Joe. Yeah,
participated in. Despite that, and he had a lot of Alan Dulles knew JFK since he was a young kid. He was coming to the family house throughout JFK's life, and Alan Dulles was happy that JFK would be elected, because he was like, I can control that guy. I know what he is.
do you know Herbert
You know?
Hoover had records on JFK, specifically JFK during World War II when he was just a
And the guy
fucking
was
sailor?
everywhere.
Fucking everywhere. You got just did he have records on everyone, or was, I mean, are they that deep that they just fucking
Well, I think JFK was from a high family. Like him and his
fair enough.
brothers always had like a little like
Wasn't just an enlisted GI. He was
no, yeah. There was always things planned for him, just like
dynastic.
Franklin
Yeah.
Roosevelt had things planned for him early
Yeah.
on because of the family connections. So,
Yeah.
but they broke. There's these examples of people in more modern times that broke from profile, had the cult of conscience, and started not playing by the rules that they were expected to follow. And it's not like dying was not part of their considerations. It's not like that was like a big surprise. It's that they valued the health of their soul and something deeper more than the material expression of their life. They were willing to do that, which I think a lot of people in the conspiratorial community tend to overlook, because they get caught too much in the mechanics of the murder, and they forget, well, what was burning inside of him? How did he cultivate the powerful creative identity that they had to navigate through such hostile environments, to the point of being willing to be more happy to die than to live according to the rules that were being set for them, where they could have lived till their 90s, very old
Yeah.
age in mansions. They could have had it great, and
Just
they chose to not do that because of something more important. And there's cases of like King Carlos of Spain in the 1780s, who was also, by all evidence I've seen, a good man. He broke from his Habsburg profile, found a love for the people. I think he had some
some wise advisors who worked him and trained him to break from his bad advisors, and he was educated to that spark was kindled, and you could see like the paintings that King Carlos, I think it's the I forget which Carlos it is now, but that one who was active in the 1780s. He was a lover of the American Revolution. He saw in his mind an age of reason whereby all of the serfs and the poor would be able to be brought to a better way, and he created a land bank to provide credit instead of for wars, but for the development of canals, of schools, of training of orphans. Like he did a lot of good things, and all of the paintings that he commissions of himself, he's never wearing like a ton of regalia. He's like he's never that. He's just always portraying himself like wearing his hunting rifle, having killed a rabbit, like very like down to earth guy. And there's other examples of good royals in the past. I don't know of that many examples today, but they're there. So the breaking of family profiles does occur, but you got a lot running against you. I mean, the chances are low, very low.
Yeah. It is
Oh, one quick one. King George III. King George III, actually, the Mad King, who's the one active during the American Revolution. They call him the Mad King because when you actually look at his life, he wasn't a bad guy. He didn't like being the head of an evil empire. he actually he would he was driven nuts by the expectations of him having to fill that unnatural role he was being expected to fill. And I did a whole lecture on him a while ago, and that's a sad case. They had to take him out at a certain point in like 1810. They're like, we can't have you anymore as king, and they put him into like solitary confinement in like a vest.
we can't have you keep thinking about the atrocities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess from about the whole, being detached, is that advantageous or disadvantageous? I think we could maybe approach it again, and instead of the individual, just look at it from like an evolutionary standpoint, right? The ability to propagate to the next generation. Is that advantageous for the quote unquote cabal to be detached, to look at everyone as subjects, and to think you're above it? And then by the time you have your own crisis of conscience and die, someone else is replacing you and the machine goes on.
It depends. Is there evidence that their authentic self-interest as is maintained by them having made that detached choice?
No, I don't.
Or
I don't think that. I don't think that matters.
okay,
Does the machine? Does that power? Just like the whirlpool with the water. Fuck the water. Does the structure stay? These guys might all. I mean, at the end of his life, like James Jesus Angleton was miserable. He's an alcoholic. He was gaunt. Everyone left him.
suicide or something? I think he committed suicide.
He might have. I mean, a lot of them they end up just fucked, but the machine keeps going. So no, we're not talking about them. The
Or does the machine
machine.
implode at a certain point
Oh
after?
yeah, we might just not be on a long enough timeline. We might have to wait a couple more centuries and observe it.
Similar. I mean, like there is a certain mediocrity that is embedded generation to generation. Like if you look at a lot of the official, like those upper level managers we currently see available, and expressing the interests, of the oligarchy. Let's say parting over at Davos. Look at a lot of these characters. Look at Yuval Harari, and look at like how they compose their thoughts. It is such a mediocre quality of thought process and generation compared to just a couple of generations earlier, where if you read like Bertrand Russell or read H.G. Wells's Open Conspiracy, or Bertrand Russell's like Impact of Science on Civilization, or they're so much more. They had so much more depth and rigor and intellectual fortitude back then, and then they created these structures, which they've now
Propagated.
the structures have promulgated beyond their lifetimes, but now we're a couple of generations later, and there's a mediocrity in those people who are now expected to like helm the machine, or manage the ship of the machine. So I mean, from what I'm looking at, when I look at a deep dive of history as a whole, I find that this parasite is really good at doing sort of the same thing, but in a modified fashion over the course of different cycles of history. And the oligarchical structures, the families, the the top down cults of Rome that managed, the cult of Apollo Dionysus, the cult of Cybele, the cult of Mithridates, which was the cult that sort of managed all of the Praetorian Guard of Rome. It was the sort of the centuries cult. All of these different cults were all managed by a certain upper oligarchical system that are not that different in nature than a lot of the Freemasonic cults and Luciferian cults that emerged out of the recent post-Renaissance period. They took on like different physical structures, slightly different names to the rituals, but ultimately the same thing in terms of what it's doing and how it works on the mind and on the political body. But every time that this oligarchy really, as a parasite, is able to maximize its desires, it usually kills the host. And Rome doesn't do well at a certain point, and it just ends up like collapsing under its own overbloated, atrophy. Like it atrophies its own powers of creative flexibility. It can't be flexible anymore because it destroyed those creative, loving natural powers that everybody's endowed with, but that are crippled. But that's the basis upon which human society thrives, is the cultivation of those individual thought and genius. So empires are just all about stasis and stagnation, and they get it, and then they kill the host. The parasite then has to sort of like, it doesn't benefit. Like I looked at those families. That's the topic of my fourth volume that's coming out this week, is how the families kind of like all started backstabbing each other after like Rome melts down into like the Visigoths, the Huns, the Ostrogoths, and everybody else like sort of becomes these like, it's like a warring states period of Rome, right? For like 200 plus years. And there's like a complete chaos within the oligarchy. They got to find like a new center command structure that's a little bit more strategic and sort of try to reconstruct. It takes some centuries to start reconstructing their empire again using similar techniques. And then they do it all over again, and they get what they want, and then they self-collapse again. And then they have to sort of like rewire themselves, migrate, find a new host, reconstruct themselves. And it's like this cycle of self-destruction. It doesn't seem to be indicative of something. It doesn't indicate, to my mind, that they actually are operating on true secret knowledge or anything of that sort. They're operating on something that has power, but not real knowledge, not truth, and it's thus out of whack with the laws of nature. I see them acting against the laws of nature in that sense.
I was talking about this last week with someone about, whether it's oral tradition or written tradition, how that's really like the biggest separator between us and the animals, is like the animals teach their kin how to survive, and every generation teaches the kin the same thing, versus like we pass down generations. So when someone learns, metallurgy 3,000 years ago, we pass it on, and now we no longer have to relearn that, right? We're standing on the shoulder, like we're using computers that you and I didn't invent. We're using microphones that we didn't invent. Right? We're using airlines and medicine. That's kind of the difference, right? It's like playing a video game and having to restart every day versus being able to save it and then pick up the next day from where you saved. But that only goes so far, because when we look at kingdoms and oligarchs and power structures, in that same way, they're almost like the animals in that they just repeat. Their lifespan is like 500 years, but they just keep collapsing and repeating. So it's almost like they're never learning anything. You have to wonder, is AI going to be the next jump to where some machine examines every empire that's ever risen and fallen, and it goes, oh, I'm not going to make the same mistakes. And is that going to be the next paradigm shift of like empires that don't fall to the same fate as prior empires? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the question of on the one hand, AI, I think when you look at machine learning per se, it is intrinsically, it's ontologically limited in a certain way. Like, for example, if you take human artistry, like for example, the type of poetic intention you could only communicate through an allegory, for example, the story of wise King Solomon, right? And the dispute of the two mothers who said that they're mothers of the same baby. And his solution that he provides to them
was kind of like the computer solution. It's like, okay, you say you're a mom, you say you're a mom of this one baby. Okay, the computer solution would simply resolve that very much like he does in the story, which is like, let's cut the baby in half and give you each a half. Easy. No more problem. You each have half a baby.
The
Now,
simplicity of men.
exactly.
Got it in half. Stop bitching.
So he does. I think the resolution was a demonstration of why AI has an ontological upper limit, that
It has a
a computer
ceiling.
couldn't make that type of leap, which was made by whoever wrote that story of King Solomon, which is that no, the true mother is the one who said, okay, give the baby to the other mom. You know, like that she had, because she demonstrated love of the baby, whereas the other mother was kind of just cold and
Yeah.
detached, and it's like, okay, no, it's not you. So on the one hand, I think that AI as a whole has been a little bit overblown by those who want us to believe that the oligarchy themselves have these sort of like neo-secular magical powers. Back in the day, it was maybe like, you know, the angels were on the side of the oligarchs or the masters, so there's no point really resisting because the angel, you know, they have the side of God and the angels, whereas what do you have, you know, slave?
You pig.
Today I think they're using more like a whole slew of these different modern tech, you know, like the nanobots in the injections are controlling our minds, and you know, like the AI is going to be deployed to manage our universe, and or you know, Elon Musk will say, unless we merge with the machines, and then we can like avoid going extinct by whatever the case. Like there's so many variants.
Still extinction in a sense. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, but I see it as sort of just a neo-paganistic belief structure that's designed more than anything to render us impotent. Not that machine learning is a bad thing. Like machine learning could be useful in a variety of ways to do things that, you know, like cyclical human labor, things that human beings do that a machine can also do. If you have a healthy society, well, that should liberate the human to actually now explore
Expand
their
their mind.
metaphysical,
Higher consciousness. Yeah.
yeah, like, you know, become, you know, yeah, develop a real hobby, develop a skill set, you know,
We
develop your
won't do that.
artistic
We won't
ingenuity.
do that though.
Well, we're far from it culturally right now, I gotta say. Like we're pretty down in the dumps. But you know, conceptually speaking, I don't think that that's out of whack with our nature. It's just we're culturally so impoverished right now that it's many many stages of development have to happen before we can get there.
Yeah, we're still in the horse and buggy of like morality, but we're in
Yeah,
the,
and
the
that gets me
stealth
to
bombers of technology.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, we've fallen. I think in many ways we're more morally advanced a few generations ago. We've fallen back a little bit through arrogance, in some ways.
But in some ways not. I mean, it's not humanity's not entirely fucked. I mean, just even
No,
now,
not
I'm reading.
entirely. I just think we've stumbled.
Sure.
And, you know, but I'll have to say that gets to the second thing, which was the benchmarking question, and like how when a society is advanced, you know, through the Bronze Age, you can use that past knowledge and then use it to continue to build upon. That's true, but it could also be a point of corruption if you do it wrong, if you do it sloppy. Because if people get too dependent upon memorizing past the effects of past creative works that produced technological innovations, but if we just memorize the technique or we memorize the formula and we don't think about um, understanding what was
What
the creative process that brought the new discovery, that manifested in the new technology, that produced the new symbolic mathematical formula which works. But if we don't go through that process, it's not real knowledge. It's just sort of like right opinion, wearing the costume of knowledge, but we can't play with it. We don't have that creative flexibility to do what the creative, like what Da Vinci did or what Pythagoras did. With, you know, like we can't play to improve qualitatively upon those discoveries that were given to us. Not that we should go through every single discovery that's ever been made. We never get anywhere.
yeah.
But we do have to, like, I think, have an education system that does encourage us to not just memorize and pass tests, but to really think about why things are true, so that we don't take things for granted anymore. And I would say in that sense, like, we have a very advanced society today in terms of the technological levels that we're at, but people are arguably a lot dumber in very important ways than they used to be, because they're just treating things based on surface appearance. They're not thinking about what's behind the surface appearance of things anymore. We've lost the ability. That's why people don't believe in conspiracy theories. They're like, oh, that means you're a crazy person, right? Because you don't see a conspiracy, you don't see an intention, a purpose, a design, an idea. Like, this is invisible.
Well, it's
And people
complete.
like Martin Luther King or the founding fathers all were functional because they believed and they understood conspiracy theories were part of life, for
Yeah.
good or for bad.
Yeah. There's no critical. Hold on. I think my maintenance guy's banging at the door. Sorry. Keep talking again.
Sure.
Sorry
Okay.
about that.
So on the issue of conspiracy theories and intention, we have right now a problem whereby the question of purposefulness is not something that can be cut in half, shared in the way that a slice of pie can be cut in half. And so the type of pleasure one gets from pie is inexorably of a lower order than the sort of pleasure one can get from the pursuit of wisdom, the seeking after purpose, and the making of discoveries. And in that way, the world is not simply a zero-sum game, because purpose and discovery, design, things that allow us to have a concept of justice that's more than the sum total of their parts, cannot be located in any one singular place in time or bounded in time or space, in the sense that there cannot be an idea that is ontological of a moment before which justice existed or after which justice will cease to exist, or outside of justice. It doesn't exist in the same way as a pizza pie does, or as a cup or beverage of soda pop, which has an outside, inside, before and after. And thus, we're back now for I was just rambling about the question of the metaphysics of ideas and how they're different from physical things.
You brought up a good point about, like, yeah, the environment that makes a Da Vinci or an Einstein. Like, I mean, right, in college, there's always just like I was pre-med in college. I got a biology degree. I got into medical school. That's all I did for like 4 years was study, just complete hermit. And one thing I started to do though was just to be more like efficient with time, I just wouldn't go to class. I would just teach it to myself. Like, why walk to campus? I can fucking teach this shit to myself. And a lot of times there's nothing to teach, right? It was just chemistry. It was just memorizing equations. But that's not learning. That's just rote memorization. But then there would be like actual learning, right? You got to go in. So, whatever, this chapter on organic chemistry, you got to go in and learn it. And as you're going through, it feels different than just memorization. Oh, I'm actually learning. But I remember I started to think, like, I would do this thing where I wouldn't go past a page until I understood it. And it's different than, let's say it's a 10-page chapter on benzene rings or some shit. And you turn the page and you're going and you're like, well, I'm not sure. And then it will tell you the laws, right? I mean, it's not Newton, but it's some organic chemist. These are Matt Ehret's laws of aromatic. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I see it. The hydrogen atom will do this and the proton will blah, blah, blah. But then I remember it kind of dawned on me one day. I'm like, I'm still not learning. I'm being told the laws, which is, again, good. We can't all just have to discover everything or we'd still be cavemen, right? It is good to build on things. But I started to almost enjoy, I would come up with like my own laws at the end of like a page or two. And I'd be like, okay, it seems like this happens. It seems like that happens. And then as I'd go through the chapter, you'd start to get Bob's laws, and some of mine would be wrong, but some of them would be accurate. And you'd go, oh, fuck. Like, I came to the same conclusion. And you can do this if you're just studying all the time. You don't have a social life like I did. Now, if you just wanted to finish the chapter as fast as possible, you would just read through, find the laws, memorize the laws, go on, take the test. But if you're a fucking hermit loser like I was, you took great pleasure in, like, oh, well, one, it's just like ego stroking. You're like, I came to the same laws. But then it was also like, it dawned on me that was learning. That was actually observing the same data and being able to conclude the same laws that some guy 50 years ago concluded. And it's that you could almost put yourself in his mindset and go, he didn't have the laws to look at the end of the chapter. He had to examine it all and go, what does it mean? And that was like a different level of learning. It was like being in the weight room and like adding a little more weight. You could actually sort of feel like your neurons straining, but it was so satisfying to.
Excellent how you're saying that. Yeah.
But
Do
so
you find that it was? Oh yeah, sorry.
no, so I was gonna say is, and I got into medical school. I scored in the top 5% of the MCAT, and ultimately decided not to go. But like I always look back at that, and forever I've always thought like that ultimately was just a waste of time. Like I should have just gone, and I went to the University of Georgia. I should have gone to a football game. Like I should have had a life. And but and I started this podcast a couple of years ago, and like no one showed me how to do it. I had to, the first episodes were on a laptop in a big echoey room, and it was shit. And it's gone through iterations of, now we're 1,000 episodes in. I've been doing it for 37 months now, and different iterations of cameras and microphones and sound panels, and you learn how to conduct conversations differently and blah blah blah. But I've realized all of that kind of has its roots in that form of studying, because eventually I did come to a problem of I want to be my own boss and I want to enjoy what I do, which is talking to people. How do I turn that into a business? There's no one like, well, turn the page. Here's what you do. It's like, no, it's this baptism by fire of like balancing your own morals of like, well, I'm going to get kicked off YouTube for interviewing these doctors, but I believe in free speech and all these things. And it's allowed me to flex that muscle of learning on my own. And that leads you to then start questioning things of, just like I don't need the book to dictate the laws to me. It also then bleeds into, well, Fox News and CNN are saying this, that, and the other thing, but you're like, I'm observing this, that, and the other thing. I kind of feel like this is going on. And then the people who have never thought for themselves in their life go, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, at one time, Newton was a conspiracy theorist. It feels like, hey, I think like a force will remain at motion until there's an opposite force on it. They're like, oh, you fucking crackhead. Everyone knows it's demons. Like, right? But that's an interesting thing, that it has boiled down to the point where it's like, hey man, I think there's like a conspiracy to fund this war so that we can be this perpetual war state. And people are like, Snopes debunked that. And I'm like, okay, but like, what do you think? When you see all these people making all this money and passing laws to erode your civil liberties to further solidify and consolidate their power, and they're like, source, do you have an article about that? And I'm like, but no, they fucking own all the media. Like, you have to think on your own. Like, the building's on fire, we should leave. Well, the people in charge of it said it's not on fire. Yeah, they're trying to burn you to death. Like, sorry.
Or like, the building's on fire. Let's take this water and put it on the fire. And they're like, no, that water is dangerous.
Bob said the fire's safe and effective. And I'm like, Jill is on fire in the other room. They're like, Jill doesn't trust the science. And you're like, I'm leaving. I mean, that's the ultimate what eventually happens. You just go, God bless, I wish you the best. I'm out of here. Like,
yeah, I hope you come to the appropriate reaction when the fire touches your clothes. And I wish you the best. And I hope you remember this conversation.
But Goodbye. I'm out. But I'm out. Oh, so you're a bigot against fire. Say whatever you want. I wish you the best. I'm leaving. I'm leaving. But you can see that how that's bled into it starts with just, well, I don't need to learn it on my own. There's the 3 rules of aromatic rings, and I'm going to memorize that. And it's like, but it eventually manifests into higher orders of society of, well, they said this is safe and effective, so I don't have to think about it. And it's like, not necessarily. They also told you that 9 out of 10 doctors smoke Lucky Strikes. Like, there is, right? We got to get rid of the Glass-Steagall Act because it's getting rid of your ability to build wealth. And you're like, well, see, they said it. And it's like, they might not have your best intentions in mind.
They might be lying. But that's the thing too, right? If you don't believe in, this is the value of, like, from the standpoint of empire, having shit like the Frankfurt School and critical theory, like this Freudian Marxist Weberian hybrid crap that like retooled our school system that created a sort of toxic soil out of which relativism could grow. The idea that the only tools that we have to know the truth are our five senses. That's an ontological, unquestionable fact you have to just assume is true. You have five senses. That's all you have to look at to explore the universe. And of course, as soon as you get people into that stupid mindset, as soon as you start pressing your thoughts against the universe, thinking that you only have those five senses to work with, you will find that you can't discover any causality of anything, because your five senses are tools. They're not the source of what will give you a sense of causality. From there, you have to learn how to use your tools. You have to learn how to, like, what is it that is, I can see things, but I can't see sight. I have an idea of sight. I can smell things, but I can hear things, but I can't hear hearing. That's a concept. It's a valuable concept, and I can improve my concept or diminish my concept through ignorance or wrong ideas of it. But you have to learn to see in the realm of metaphysics, like real metaphysics, not magic, where actual substantial ideas that are well earned are what is used as a base to build upon a new idea as a structure, right? It's like this invisible. People put a lot of effort into an appreciation for the mechanics, builders, mechanics, plumbers, electricians, a lot, have real good trades in the real world. They know you can't like skip steps. You have to be very careful with your cuts, your measurements. You don't just you're not just whatever. You pay attention to how things have to work from blueprint to design to actual building the structure where people will be living in. And if you do something wrong, people die. And then oftentimes, because our society is so hypertrophied on the technician side of things, like we've produced a lot of technicians who can be who can memorize and apply rules that work, but there's been a conscious destruction of our I guess we could say is the pure has been detached from the applied. And so the speculative, the side where the mind exists, that realm has been really poisoned, so that these people don't take the same amount of self-discipline and attention to the structures, the houses of their mind and their soul, which you should pay just as much attention, if not more attention, to carefully constructing your own thought system that is going to be based upon reality as it is, not as some newspaper or talking head spin doctor in the media or anonymous expert that you're told to adapt to. It should not be that. It should be look at basic reality that is observable, and now process and think about what is making it happen. That should be a very easy, organic, natural, fun thing to do, and you tapped into it instinctively. And I know anybody who's got like a certain, I have this type of conversation I've had this with Jessica Rose. I've had this conversation with a lot of people who think with a certain potency, and they all have a very similar set of experiences somewhere along the way where they just learn to trust their own power of thought instead of trying to race ahead and get unearned answers. Every time. It's always there. And even in people who haven't thought about it, if you think about it, if you think critically, I guarantee you at some point you made that discovery in some way. And it teaches, ironically, humility. Like that's what I was going to ask you. Do you find that you were made more humble or more arrogant by your having not jumped the gun to get the right answers, but thought about it? Do you think that your ego was inflamed, convincing you of that you were such
yes and no. You're like, fuck yeah, I discovered this thing.
There's a pride,
but then yeah, of course there is.
Yeah.
But then you also start to go, you start to have these realizations that, well, if I came to this conclusion, so one, there's the ego boost where you're like, fuck yeah, I learned this. But then there's also there's the humility of like, well, that also shows me just because you discovered something and wrote it down doesn't mean that someone 100 years from now can't discover the same exact fucking thing. Does that make sense? Right. So like Bob made the laws in 1950. I'm smart. I've discovered them on my own. Well, that means somebody in 2050 can also discover them. So it's really not that, congratulations, you put the square block in the square hole. Yeah, I mean, it's a large number of people are going to be able to. Bob did it first, and it's very cool that you also did it without knowing Bob did it. But that also means somebody after you is going to do it without you. But it also, well, yeah, no, that's what it is it's humbling because you start to realize the answers are there for everyone to find. And if you just apply them, you can figure it out. So in a way, it's like the wisdom isn't yours. It's there to pick up. Anyone can do it. If humanity vanished today, given enough, or all of our collective knowledge just vanished today, every textbook, every whatever, given enough time, I mean, we would create wheels, would create aqueducts, would create like we would do it again. So in that sense, your ego can't get too big when you realize, oh, they'll some alien species has also discovered calculus, and you go, oh, it's the laws are written into the fabric of reality.
Yeah.
So it's more about finding them. Like you don't. There's real no sense of accomplishment if you scratch off a lottery ticket and win. Like someone was gonna, right?
Yeah.
You can go,
Yeah,
fuck
right.
yeah, I did it. Yeah, I took that quarter and scratched it off. I did it the best ever.
I'm number one.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, you didn't. You picked it up. Congratulations, you did it.
Yeah.
But it, above all else, I wouldn't say it's like a boost or a detraction from the ego. I'd say it's actually it's satisfying, but it's also fun. It
Mhm.
is. It's like one of the curiosities of being a human with a functioning, like my favorite thing to do with like a new video game is to not turn off all the tutorials, turn off all the tips, and don't find some walkthrough guide online. And it's just to play the game and go, what the fuck is going on? Like, all right, this is forward, this is back, this is how I pull out a gun. What is going on? How do I do this? How do I, and it's sure, I mean, someone can be like, oh, you didn't know how to fly? You have to type in this thing. And that's not fun. It's, yeah, discovering it for the first time is like a magical experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I've got I bought at a garage sale these old popular mechanics from the 1950s, and it's just shocking to see the type of like what young people who were reading that back then thought was like a popular thing to do, and they were like, there was like features on like make your own, what is it, like your own ham radio, or like explore how microwaves work by buying this device, or make your own rocketry. But I mean, just the wonder has been really crippled in so many people's minds. And if you just stop and think about it, like even the idea of what we're doing right now, there's something embedded in light that is tied to electromagnetism, right? That has a magnetic quality to that interfaces with magnetic fields, which not only that, but allows for the encoding of visual and sound effects that can be then transmitted vis-a-vis some device that I have stuck on my computer, and then transmitted to you, received by your eyes and ears, and then unpacked, identified qualitatively by something you have inside of yourself, registered as meaning, and then responded to
back out
speed, if not faster, from the standpoint of what's going on in the head. And on a subliminal level too. I mean, there's other things we haven't even begun to explore. It's a wonder that is a wondrous thing that this is everywhere. Every star is emitting light. Every star is creating the periodic table and the isotopes, and somehow you have spectrums within star systems whereby the environment is just right for some of that material to become conduits for a living expression of itself, so that the carbon in my phone and in my body and in my plant, my cat, it's not the same carbon in the sense that it is, but it's not behaving or governed by the same principles when it's in a non-living thing versus my cat. So like so much wonder, right? And when you start just appreciating it, you're like, the universe is.
Why do I need Netflix?
Yeah, why do I need that? Like, there's so many things to find. It's fun. Learning becomes a fun thing. It's not this like I gotta
do the homework.
I want to get a good job. I want my whatever peer group or family whatever to respect me or be in awe of me or something. Like those feelings start, like, they don't matter as much.
No, it's just it's like a liberating, exhilarating. I mean, it's like one of the most delicious experiences you can have. It's like discovery of like building like no one showed me how to do this podcast No, like no one, most people just said I was a fucking idiot, and I probably am. But there's like no greater experience than like I've built this ethereal machine of like cameras and lights and talking to people, and it like now it pays my rent. And to me, I'm like that's on par with like discovering fire. Like I have created my own machine that's like harnessing a wheel to be pushed by a river, and it moves the textile like machinery for you. You're like, this is fucking magic. This is occult magic. But like it is, and not only that, I mean, one, because I'm just ADD, but like I mean I've never owned Netflix. I've rarely watched movies, and that's not some like edge lord thing. Like, well, I don't consume culture. No, I don't give a fuck about it. Like, hey, I'm with a Marvel movie's fun, man. Eat a pot brownie and watch Iron Man. Like, it's fantastic. I'm not knocking it, but like the reason why I don't consume Netflix series or movies or Game of Thrones. Like, I've never watched Game of Thrones because to me, I'm like my everyday life is so much like richer. Like having this conversation with you, or I'm going to talk to a fucking doctor this or an astronaut that. Like it makes TV pale in comparison. And in the same way, you're like, why would I watch this movie when you can, yeah, discover something on your own? It's so much more. It's having a an IMAX 3D theater, and someone's watching like a black and white cathode ray TV. You're like, what the fuck are you doing? This is here. This fully immersive VR, hyper realistic. I have a supercomputer, and they're like, I'm gonna play with the abacus, and you're like, why? But I don't know. I don't know.
Oh man, I absolutely, and part of too, like you've created a platform that involves you, because I mean, for me, the learning teaching process, it obviously runs hand in hand, and I think it's like that for you too. It's like that for everybody who I think taps into a certain potent mode, which is not something we unfortunately have a lot of access to in this otherwise pretty toxic stage or moment in our civilizational experience. A lot of these opportunities have been withheld, variety of political and other reasons. But so you, but when you really get into a real learning process, you're also thinking at the same time, okay, how can I learn to communicate this? Like I want to
Yeah.
understand it so well that I can communicate intelligibly. So at the same time, you're the learner teacher, and all good teachers are like that. I've only had a couple of teachers that were good. Most of my teachers were really stiff. But the couple that were good, I know that they had that. They were happy to admit that they didn't know something. They were hungry for a student in the classroom to pose a good question that they didn't have an answer to, because then you could have a dialogue with the other class, with the room, right? And you don't know what's going to arise, but the process is going to be really valuable. That's where people are like learning to walk with their mind, and I think with the platform, you've done 1,000 of these things, but each time, you're doing a little bit of preliminary work about the person that you're going to talk to. You're thinking a little bit about how are their minds thinking that I can participate in a conversation with them. And just that alone is giving you the sort of the pacing, the self-organizing drive to assign yourself to be master of yourself and assign yourself the your tasks that you're going to carry out, the missions that you're going to give yourself. And it becomes something that we find that like a lot of people used to do this when we had a more entrepreneurial society before we became a consumer society in the early 70s. Before that, the ethic was generally this idea that everybody could be an entrepreneur, everybody could be given opportunities to develop good ideas that they have inside of them that could be then monetized, that could be something that both sustains you, your family, but also other families who will be working for something productive that you were doing as a small or medium entrepreneur or farm. And that's like the lifeblood. If you have that, you're going to have corruption, and things won't be perfect, and people will steal and cheat, and there'll be bad ideas and stuff, but you're going to be on the right path. Like things will be in a trajectory where they're getting generally better. People can expect to have the next generation living at a better life than they did. which was the case for the up until like this generation. That was the norm. It's never been the case where a generation thinks that their kids are going to live worse than they did. That's now the first time we've ever seen that.
It is
So
fucked.
it's humbling, but it's also like it's empowering, because it's like, if this, a lot of people, because they're so sense based, they think, okay, the world I live in is the norm. The mediocrity that I encounter around me and the disappointment and corruption is what is the normal state of humanity. And that really creates a nihilism. You're like, well, what the fuck is the point of that? If this is if this is the best we got,
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm just gonna like, I'm gonna detach.
Yeah.
And just, you know, I got my drugs. I'm just gonna like, I'm gonna detach.
Yeah.
There's no point. But if you're like, no, this is actually the most this is a very unnatural state of things we're told is normal, but it's not normal at all. This is super we've been told like living underwater is normal, but it's like we're humans. We're not meant to live underwater. And maybe that was like tolerable for the first couple of minutes, but now we're like, you know, 8-9 minutes into it, and things are feeling very unnatural, and we don't know why. We're all going through existential anxiety, and we're like, why? It's like, because this is not normal.
And then there's no critical thinking, and there's someone that's like, maybe we shouldn't be underwater, and they're like, well, where'd you read that? And I'm like, I'm just observing. I don't think it's, well, the guy's in charge, the guy holding us underwater said that we should be underwater. I'm like, he's trying to kill you. He's trying to fucking kill you so he can have all the oxygen. No. But
yeah, right.
I want, just like being underwater though, do you eventually reach a point where all of the conditioning breaks? You go, I know they said being underwater is safe and effective, but you're like, I've got to get the fuck out of here. I don't care who calls me a conspiracy theorist. I can't breathe. Is there a point where it just, all the conditioning is just shattered by biological necessity?
I would say that that's a bit of an open question at the moment.
I mean, what does that
We're
even
certainly
look?
seeing cracks.
Yeah,
I
mean,
tons of structural cracks in the zeitgeist, and the contrast
the
between the
Matrix it's glitching.
glitching left and right everywhere. Yeah. How we respond morally to those glitches, and epistemologically to those glitches, remains to be seen, whether we still have a fitness to survive or not morally. I certainly have faith. I'm an optimist. I think we can go for oxygen. I think the desire is there. We just lack a sense of how it works. We forgot how to use the lungs properly. But I don't know. It's like there's a lot of loops to jump through at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And I guess, well, we could maybe kind of wrap it up with like,
Well, here's what I'd say. Like,
sure.
it depends on what the audience who's part of this process, right? Like, people think that they're watching this. They're not. They're participating in this. We said at the beginning, you're a voyeur with the trench coat. Not really. You're actually a voyeur with the trench coat, but you're participating. You're part of
you're in the city park exposing yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The cops can and will hit you.
So it always comes down, I think, to this subjective question of like, well, what are we going to choose to do differently in the course of our personal lives for those watching this? It always comes down to that. And if people run, there's a lot of things that have been put in our path to have us numb the subjective self-examination side of the human experience. And I think we can't run away from it. We have to tackle it courageously. And how we process and manage that battle, it will determine, I think, the outcome of whether or not we, as a broader we, have the fitness to go for oxygen and stop allowing ourselves to put our own heads underwater. And there's not even a hand, really. The hand is really tiny that's putting our big head underwater. It's like a tiny little sub-midget hand, like doing this. It's very easy physically, if we wanted to. We are many, they are few, to move the head back out of the water. But a lot of it is in our own mind. It's like the elephant, the famous baby elephant tied to the stick problem,
stake,
right?
Yeah.
That big 3-ton elephant will still not walk away from the stick if they've been trained since a baby. It's the same thing. It's a mind game in many ways. So people should be reading slower. Don't read faster. Read slower. Think about what you're reading. think, why are you reading? Don't read to consume. Don't, think, maybe write your thoughts, have a blog, have a Substack, start a podcast, like take a more active participation in the studying process. So it's not just passive learning, but active learning. And, organize with other like-minded people, like try to get better at being a communicator, a conduit of these higher universal concepts. The better you're going to stumble, and it'll be sloppy at first, but don't lose heart. Keep trying. You'll get better. Like anybody who goes to the gym, that muscle will grow. It'll grow pretty fast spiritually. It's not physical. If you do it with an honest heart, and try to think about politics with a more humble, I would say, with more humility. People often look at politics from a somewhat from filters of their own prejudice, and I think instead we have to look at it from a broader historical appreciation as well as other cultures, right? Like what is the Chinese civilization? What is shaping the psycho-spiritual cultural matrix that shapes the political and social culture and artistic culture of Chinese? What about Indians? What about the Russians? What about the Iranians? Like try to really immerse yourself in another culture, and then look at yours from somebody else's vantage point a bit, which we don't do nearly enough.
I think, and there's also like you kind of have to have humility in that. I think most generations, whenever things get bad, think it's the end of the world. They're like, things are more fucked now than ever before. I mean, it's been bad before, but it's like, no, it's not. It is bad, but it's also not. Like, even just World War II. I mean, just think about that. Like, 425,000 Americans died. We didn't even lose a whole lot, like, in the big picture. That's, I mean, in 3 years, we lost, what, 9 times what we lost in Vietnam in a decade? And it just had, but it's just what happened. Taking Iwo Jima was like more casualties than the entirety of the war on terror. That was just like a week. Like,
yeah.
And then you think about that, and we got through that. I mean, we got through the Cold War. JFK got popped a year after the Cuban Missile Crisis. We still got through it. It doesn't mean that things are good now, but I always have to kind of remove myself and be like, you really think that this is the worst it's ever been? I don't know. And it might be. I kind of have a feeling that we're on like the edge of something. I don't think whatever happens is going to be along the lines of what's normally happened. Oh, this empire falls in that one. I feel like there's about to be like a new dimension to it. Like we're going to break off into like some space colony, or there's going to be some new paradigm shifting thing of hyper intelligent AI or indistinguishable VR or some weird transhumanism. It feels like we're just like pushing down on the toothpaste bottle, but not opening the top. And it's like something's going to explode in some new, if it's not thermonuclear warheads, it's going to be some new form of creativity and innovation. I don't know what it is. I can't possibly know what it is.
Well, I think definitely it's like the slingshot thing, like we're at a place where there was 8 billion of us, and we have atomic power. We're on the cusp of fusion power. All of the powers could do a lot of good, but it's like if you aim it badly, it could cause a lot of damage. Like it depends where you aim it. You shoot for the something's gonna give though. Something's definitely gonna give. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, we are. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. We're pulling back the slingshot, and it's like this is gonna go one of two ways. We're either gonna hit the target.
Potential.
Yeah,
there's so much potential for good or for bad, but the potential is as big as it's ever been. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, it's splitting the atom, and it's like, oh, we are so close to like free energy for everyone, and it's like, or thermonuclear holocaust, and
exactly.
I feel like that's where we are with robotics, AI, space exploration, social media,
too, right? Like CRISPR and some of the microchipping technology that involves brain paraplegics. Like it's feasible that we could get rid of a variety of hereditary diseases that have plagued humanity for millennia. That's possible, but at the same time, if you have a death cult utilizing that tech,
Yeah.
More dystopic.
Yeah. It's
So yeah, this is where the moral cultural field is always more important. Like culture, everything is downstream from culture. And if you the main battleground is really this cultural field primarily. And that always has to stay on pace, if not more advanced than the tech side of society's evolution. And if the tech side is allowed to atrophy or sorry, hypertrophy, and the cultural side morally atrophies, then you're in a technocratic feudal dystopia, every time.
I guess
But if you have proper balance of both co-evolving together, like why don't we have more? Why are we told that nobody can compose like Beethoven or Bach anymore? We're told that was from the Baroque period. We don't do that anymore. Now we do pop music or like modernism, which is just like random sounds. Or like nobody can paint like Da Vinci or Rembrandt. We're not allowed. We don't do that. That's the obsolete old way of painting. Now we paint like Jackson Pollock or Mark Rothko with big cute, big splatterings of paint. That's the new wisdom of art. It's like, well, no, why am I being told that as an art student that I can't do that anymore? What if I want to do that? What if I want to reconstruct and learn the techniques and the science of painting and color and harmony that these great masters once understood? Why can't I do that? I might, so that you need a society that can always cherish the good of the past and also learn about the folly that occurred when we went along with evil too long. And this is where I think the arts come into play. Like the whole idea of like looking at reading Edgar Allan Poe's stories or looking at experiencing Shakespeare's plays and his tragedies are not just to be entertained, although they are entertaining, but it's also to learn something about these universal lessons of being a human and being a human that isn't able to break with your own tragic impulses. And then you become a Hamlet or you become a Macbeth who had maybe potential, or Othello who had potential to do good and to be a great person. And they had these little things inside of them that they couldn't resolve, and that is at the heart of why they became tragic and killed everybody around them, including themselves. So great art, music, literature, all of these things should be able to be made better. We shouldn't just be like walking around in togas because like Plato had great ideas or like in wigs because Mozart, lived in a world where people wore stupid wigs. But like, why not rediscover what was best about what they created, and then maybe we'll discover we can even make it better than they did, right? Instead of making it arbitrary, abstract, like just fucking sloppy as sin. So we're now in a cult of ugliness called art. That's why I broke out of school. I mean, I had to quit. I dropped out of fine arts in university. That's what I was studying because at a certain point I didn't know why, but I knew that I was being broken emotionally to be an abstract artist, and I couldn't pass if I was making any of the ideas that I had in my mind. If I was making them intelligible via my art to others with like a moral intention that I wanted to try to embed in some way in my animated videos I was making, I would fail consistently. I was like, no, I don't want to just make people squirm uncomfortably like I'm being told I have to do.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, fuck that. I'm just trying to think, like, then what's like the thesis to this? What's the conclusion of this whole podcast? I mean, is it?
Yeah.
I think it's just like observe reality and try to understand the laws of it. Not human laws, but like the immutable physical laws, and go forward. It seems like all degeneracy and decay comes from just passing it down and doing something because someone else said to. Like, do what you want to do.
Stupid. Don't do anything stupid.
Don't do anything stupid. That's all we get out of 2.5 hours. In conclusion, don't be stupid. Then we're no better than the oligarchs.
Yeah, exactly. Be better than the oligarchs.
Be better
Like,
than the
destroy your inner oligarch. Be
destroy your inner oligarch.
Yeah.
Have your own personal French Revolution. Decapitate your soul. No, that's not good. That's a bad one.
Decapitate your inner demons.
maybe it's flawed thinking that we even have any sort of authority to dictate a thesis. Maybe
Maybe.
you should.
Yeah, let's let the audience decide what this was all
Yeah,
about.
no, come to your own conclusion. Read your organic chemistry and watch the podcast and make your own conclusion. Fuck us. Don't listen to us. That's the ultimate teacher. In conclusion, I'm not telling you shit. Figure it out on your own. That's the
good.
best advice we can give.
Yeah, I can totally get behind that. All right, that's it right there.
Fuck you all. All right, man. Well, hey, please email me the links to all your shit, and I'll put it in the description. I'd love to have you on again, dude. And thank you for that. Thank you for that chat. As you can tell, there is no rhyme or reason to this podcast. I just turn it on and have no idea what we're going to talk. We start with JFK
No, this is
and
good.
salsa.
This is good soul food. I appreciate it.
That's the only way to go about it. That's the only. Just stop thinking and start talking. Start with JFK's brain and salsa, and end with philosophy. Fuck if I know. All right, dude. Hey, I'll send this to you when it's up. It'll be up in like, I don't know, like an hour or something.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you so much. Hey, please, if you could, right, just email me whatever links you want in the description, and I'll copy and paste and put them right in the description.
Sir.
All
Okay.
right, thank you so much.
Until next time.
All right, bye.